Alaska is the largest state in the country and the emptiest, more than twice the size of Texas, with fewer people in all of it than you'd find in a single mid-sized city. Most of it has no roads. You reach the interior by boat, by bush plane, or not at all. That scale is not the backdrop to today's story, but it is a character in this story. A country that big can swallow a hiker, a hunter, an airplane, a human body, and never give any of it back to you. Anchorage sits in a bowl between Cook Inlet and Chugach Mountains, the biggest city in the state, and in the 1970s and early 80s, a boom town running hot on that sweet oil money. The Trans-Alaska Pipeline had just been built, and tens of thousands of workers, overwhelmingly men, had poured north chasing the highest wages on the continent. Where that much money and that much loneliness collect, a second economy grows up to meet them. Bars, strip clubs, and the sex trade of 4th Avenue and Spenard neighborhood, staffed largely by young women who'd come to Alaska for the same reason the men had. It was a transient town, a place where people arrived and vanished all the time, and nobody thought twice, which made it a place where a certain kind of woman could disappear, and the disappearance would be filed as normal. Somewhere in that town, for at least 12 years, lived a man who was, by every daytime measure, just a normal pillar of the community. He was a married father of 2, a churchgoer, a small business owner who baked bread and donuts and wedding cakes for the people of Anchorage, a world-class bow hunter with his name in the record books, admired by other Alaskans for exactly the skills that the frontier prizes. And at night, when his family was away, he turned those skills on women. He would pick up a dancer or a sex worker downtown, pull a gun, handcuff her, and take her to his house. Some of them he loaded into a small plane, flew them over the Nick River wilderness, turned loose in the open country, and then he hunted them with a rifle and a knife, the same way he hunted the animals that had made him famous. He buried them along the river and marked each grave on an aviation map he kept hidden behind the headboard of his bed. His name was Robert Hansen. The papers called him the Butcher Baker, and if you have watched true crime at all, or even crime-inspired shows, you've seen some episodes that are inspired by exactly what Robert Hansen did. He confessed to 17 murders and more than 30 rapes across roughly 12 years, a toll that puts him among the most prolific serial killers in American history, and one of the least known outside of Alaska. He was formally convicted of 4, 12 bodies were recovered, one of them has never been identified to this day. For more than a decade, the same 2 things protected him. 1, that wilderness we talked about that would not surrender the evidence. And 2, a society that quietly decided the women he took were not worth looking for. He was stopped in the end, not by a detective's breakthrough, but by a 17-year-old girl in handcuffs who got away from him at an airfield and told police exactly who he was. And she was very nearly not believed. This is the story of the country that made it possible, the man who did it, the woman he took, and the people who finally stopped him. It runs from a bakery in Iowa to a hospital bed in Anchorage, and the women stay at the center of it the whole way because he spent a decade trying to make sure that no one would ever find them. I'm Monty Mader.
And I'm Andy Jones.
And this is Highway to Hell.
Hello.
We're back.
Good
We're
evening.
back. Good evening. Good evening, my good friend.
A funny thing, just real quick, you mentioned the pipeline. My grandfather was in charge of building that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I find so much new lore about you, Andy.
I've got a lot of weird
all the
lore in
time.
my but yeah, he was in charge
crazy.
of that. Yeah, he built
That's
that.
wild. And I've been to Alaska. I'm actually really excited to go, like, especially for Alaska for this episode, because it's such a unique place and so many people haven't been there.
Yeah, and on the topic of true crime too, it's like I don't know of a lot of stories that take place there.
Yep.
This one, and then Israel Keys.
Yep.
He's from, but that's another topic for another day. I won't go there.
Yeah. But it's not somewhere that people typically think about. Like they think of LA or New York City
Yep.
or, highways because of all the interstate killings.
Yep.
So it's going to be really, really fun. And also this is our first show that we're recording since we had our show back with the band.
Yes.
Which was
A
so much
glorious
fun.
event.
It was a glorious event. It was so much fun. Did you have too much to drink? Is that what you said? A little
I have too
bit.
much fun.
Just a little bit. It was great. I came in a little bit nervous because these shows, if you haven't been to downtown Nashville, they are 4 hours long, no breaks.
Nope.
And was nervous. Our set is so big. We have a lot of medleys. I was worried I would forget some of it, but it came right back.
It was the muscle memory kicked in. We had done that for so many years. It's like,
Yep.
it's just going to kick right back in with no problem.
Yeah,
But-
I'm super excited for it. And I think that's going to be real fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And of course, pushing some of the original stuff eventually here too, which
Yeah, we've got that coming out this
Lauding.
fall. We're working on photo shoots right now, new music videos, getting
reaching
the
out
last
to Calvin today for
Yep,
bass.
getting the last of our mixes done and getting everything sorted. It's been good, but I just wanted to I wanted to throw that in there because I was so excited about the show.
Oh yeah, no,
It was so
it was a great time. It was great seeing so many friends show up to support. I mean, every time I looked up, which is rare because I'm in my own world, I'm like, oh my god, look, it's
It's like it's more of our people.
Yes, that was so nice,
and it was pretty busy for a Wednesday night.
Yep.
Yeah, it was so fun.
Wonder why.
Right? It was so fun. And also
Yeah.
this venue that we played at specifically wants rock and hard rock. So we were really in our element. We did quite a bit of hip hop too.
Yeah,
By request. It was,
That was
really, really fun.
great.
And like dance club stuff, which
it
was fun.
So much
But
fun.
metal.
Oh yeah,
Couple,
can't help it but be metal.
Right? We can't. It happens. We play Toxic and it turns into a metal song.
Yeah, it's great.
Couple quick announcements before we go into comments. I had a couple people message me asking about the Patreon. And this is basically, it's our, fan page. It's where you're going to get exclusive content. It's patreon.com/Highway to Hell podcast. For $4 a month, you get every episode ad free and a bonus feed. Every episode we record these campfire chats that go over on Patreon. That's where the travel itineraries are. And then in the future, you also get to vote on one episode a month. And we're going to start doing like secret episodes specifically over there. But I had a few people ask me what that looked like, and that's what it's there for. Also, you'll see the full list of sources because the show notes to publish the episode don't allow me to post all the sources. It has a character limit. So if you ever want to see all the sources, they're going to be in the notes over there.
Yes.
And also, thank you so much lately for the new follows, the new reviews. I understand that like not everyone can join a subscriber page, but if you have enjoyed the show, if it has like just helped you feel good or make you feel less alone in the dark, or you've just enjoyed the true crime, if you could leave us a review, would be so incredible. Give us 5 stars or a sentence. This is how strangers find us. This is how people that don't know of the show yet find it outside of your recommendations. And then we're going to talk about some comments. Oh, one more thing. I forgot. We had some requests from the Lights Out episode where people really liked the spooky stories.
Yeah.
We are considering swapping out the travel itineraries for the spooky stories.
Right.
Doing a haunted story or a spooky story at the end of each episode instead of the itineraries, which we could still always do if we're going to a place where there's like it's a really big travel hub. But we want to gauge interest. So leave us a comment. Let us know what you'd prefer. Obviously, this episode has a travel itinerary on it, but we had a lot of requests about doing more tales and trying to figure out a way to do that where it's not just on paranormal podcasts, maybe.
Okay, cool.
So
yeah,
that's a possibility. So
Sounds
if that's
good to me.
something you're interested in, let us know. Or if you're like, listen, I love the travel itineraries. It tickles my brain to fantasize about going to these places on dark tourism. We can also keep them. So you let us know what you want.
We'll figure it out. Just let us know.
Just let us know.
Leave a comment and I shall see it. I'm the comment master.
Yeah.
Anyway, so moving on to comments. So here we go. From the Herb Baumeister episode. The mannequins in South Florida, especially Miami, are built very different than what it used to be in Midwest. Miami's are super curvy with boobs and butts.
Yep.
That's so weird, man.
We got to get those mannequins.
Oh, God. I know you received some Nebraska suggestions last episode. I think the Franklin scandal is right up Monty's alley. It happened in Omaha in the early 80s. Omaha also has plenty of spots to add to the itinerary also. This is the Franklin scandal.
Franklin scandal. I'm going to pull up some notes and we're going to make notes on these so that I stop forgetting them.
I'm the worst about it. Please, please, please visit Howie's for lunch or dinner when in Edinburgh. See, I said Edinburgh. You guys don't have to say, you're saying it wrong. And you know what? No, Edinburgh, just to bother you people. I'm just kidding. It's my favorite, and every time we visited, the food and wine has been fantastic. Excellent. First time commenting. Yes to Ouija board stories.
Yes.
That might be a good thing for Lights Out, is throwing some Ouija board stuff
there's
in there.
some scary Ouija board stories.
Oh, my God.
And I actually have one.
I do, too. You bought me one with that picture of the old lady.
Oh, I did.
Remember that?
I did.
I still have that picture of that old lady, too.
Oh, yeah.
So I think I do anyway. Beside the point, found this podcast today, and I'm wearing my Uranus Fudge Factory shirt. It does say that the best fudge comes from Uranus. Yeah, that's killer. I need to start. I think this on some of the shots you can see one of the stickers there, but I'll wear the shirt next time. Let's see here. Going from the West Memphis 3 episode, I would argue that Hobbs has more than the potential to kill. Documented he shot Pam Hobbs' brother after he beat Pam brutally. Mark Byers was a weirdo, but he didn't kill the boys. We know where he was at the time of the crime. Man, that's crazy.
Yeah, Hobbs was a loose cannon.
Yeah, really was. From the Quiver of Care episode, why has Rusty never been charged with neglect, religious abuse, etc.?
That's a great
Great question, sir.
That's a great
man.
question.
Let's see.
And he still has he's so arrogant about it. Even in like recent interviews, he's been very nonchalant about it.
What
Like,
a
I did the right thing.
weirdo.
I don't know what you mean. Ugh.
Oh, here we go. Good day from Australia. Hello.
Hi.
I've been listening since the first episode and love the show. Glad you love it. You should definitely do some Australian cases. Yes, I have recommendations. Okay, you have recommendations. If you hear this, please let us know some Australian recommendations. In supernatural phenomenon that is really fascinating. If you're interested, absolutely always interested. Oh, this is a quinky dink. On that thought, I did just hear a case I'd never heard about in America. Robert Hansen in Anchorage, Alaska,
Well, look
who
at
abducted
this.
at least 17 women. Keep up the good work and stay spooky. You're in for it
You're
today.
you're in for a
friend.
treat, my friend.
Let's see. Yes, please, to the history of tarot cards and Ouija boards. That'd be so interesting.
Yes.
And let's see. We'll do a couple more here because you guys are leaving so many, and that's amazing.
We
Please
love
keep
it.
up. Let's see. This is from the Jeffrey Dahmer episode. Oh, look. Another case involving Ohio. My mom swears that all serial killers have some connection to Ohio. Interesting theory. I know someone who lived in Dahmer's bath home before they knew what, after the Dahmers moved and before they knew what had happened there. Ooh.
Yikes.
Ugh. Gosh.
Mm-mm.
And let's see here. NYC is my favorite place to visit. Monty, love you and your work. Let's see. Thank you, Monty and Andy, for the brilliant podcast. I always look forward to your episodes, especially the paranormal. I'm struggling with depression. I find your ghosts and murder chats very grounding and cheering, weirdly. Another vote for longer episodes. Okay, and we shall do one more here.
And we also had a comment online you were telling me before we started recording where someone accused me of being AI.
Yeah, it was on one of the videos on Instagram, and I'm like, what is this? Like, I don't see all of those because there's a ton. And this person's like, she's not real. It's clearly AI. I'm like,
I'm going to take that to mean I'm going to take that to mean that my skincare routine has been working really well. Because I'm looking at myself in the screen right now, and you can definitely tell like this is real person skin.
Yeah,
like it's not as clear right now as I would like it to be, but that's what I'm going to take that
comment
as.
It was so bizarre. I mean, she's real. I'm clearly AI.
Yeah,
but
turns out Andy's the one that's
dun,
not real.
Dun, dun, built by Skynet. Anyway, and here's one more comment. Or rather a question. Could Julie have gone into marriage knowing she was a gay man's lavender wife? So if she saw an unknown man around the pool, just assume it was just a sexual encounter. And that's from the Herb Baumeister episode.
I mean, maybe.
I never thought about that.
Maybe. I mean, because you have to think about, especially in that time, you know, people really couldn't be openly.
No.
You couldn't be openly gay. Like you'd lose your job. You'd be ostracized. You could be assaulted, killed, arrested.
Burned
all
at the
thing-
stake.
You know, all the things. Burn the witch. And I would imagine that there were quite a few people who got into, especially women. I could see this happening more with women getting into a lavender marriage, assuming it's going to be safe. Or being queer yourself, which I don't think Julie was. I didn't get any indication of that from any of the sources.
Me either.
But it may have been something where, you know, again, because even back then, divorce was much more difficult.
Yeah.
You know, domestic violence was really hard to prosecute. Marital rape wasn't a thing, right? It was totally legal to assault your wife. And so I think I have often wondered if maybe some women got into those marriages knowing what they were knowing or at least suspecting what they were getting into, but thinking it would be safer.
Yeah, possibly. And with Baumeister, what year was that again? Was that the 80s?
Yes.
That's why I was drawing.
Yep. So I think they got married
blank.
in the 70s,
Okay.
but the crimes largely took place in the 80s.
And into the 90s. Right. Okay. I was just making sure I had the
So
right guy.
I could see that. I think
Yeah,
I
never
wouldn't
know.
be surprised if there were quite a few women. And that's not to say that obviously you hear stories of men and women who married someone didn't know that their partner was queer.
Or a serial killer.
Or a serial killer. That seems to be a common thread. Not at the same time, to be clear. But I think it could have been that she meets this, you know, very quiet, kind of odd, demure person, and we don't know really much about her background before that. And maybe it just felt safe, you know. And I would imagine there were quite a few, what I would call open lavender marriages where both parties knew and they had an arrangement.
Yeah.
But maybe for her, she just, you know, she got the kids she wanted, and as long as he kept it in the pool house, she didn't care. Because it's hard for me to imagine that she never noticed.
I
have a hard time buying into.
I mean,
and maybe she
had
didn't
to.
suspect at first. Maybe she did when they got married. Maybe they had an arrangement. Maybe they didn't. but it's difficult for me to swallow that she wouldn't have known anything went on
I know. Same
or saw,
here.
because you have to see somebody
years.
getting out. It's years, and you have to at some point see somebody getting out of the car or hear voices in the pool house. Like you don't sleep soundly every night, kind of a thing.
I wish.
Right? I wish I did.
Good Lord.
I would even take most nights if I slept well most nights. That would be great. So I think that's a great question. I think
it's possible.
I think it's very possible, and I think I would put my bid on she at least knew something.
Yeah.
I would say she probably knew he was attracted to men or something was going on, and she just chose not to ask.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yep, out of sight, out of mind.
Yep.
And again, a lot of women had to really make these decisions about their financial and physical safety. And so if you're in a position where you have a comfortable house, you're not getting physically hurt, you have a lot of incentive to not rock the boat in that way.
Just, keep it up.
And I think obviously that was exacerbated in the early 20th century and before, but there was still a lot of that in the 70s and 80s, a lot of scandal and shame around divorce. It's so, because I grew up with like divorce being one of the ultimate sins, and the woman's the adulteress, and if a man cheats, it's because he strayed.
Can never be wrong.
He strayed.
That foul Jezebel tempted me.
I don't see divorce as a failure anymore. No. Growing up, I really did. I think it actually takes a lot of, and that's not to say I don't want that to be taken as people like, oh, you're saying people should quit on their marriages at the first. No, I'm saying when you've done everything you can. And you know yourself well enough to know that relationship has ran its course. Mm-hmm. It's not healthy anymore. You're not happy. I don't think you get gold stars for suffering.
No, yes.
Like, I think it takes a lot of courage and a lot of authenticity to walk away from a relationship that is either abusive or unfaithful or just doesn't work anymore. Yeah. And to acknowledge that people grow apart sometimes. Yeah. I think I've completely changed my view on divorce from when I grew up, is I think there's a lot of, because you look at people who go through it and it's really tough. It takes a lot of courage.
Oh yeah.
And then it takes a lot of courage to rebuild your life after that.
Yep. No, without a doubt.
I think if we had a healthier perspective on like healthy relationships are the goal, not necessarily just the marriage or the divorce.
Yeah. I agree with that. It's more
we're
about
a little ways off from that,
not the the title or whatever, the gold crown. Oh, look how good my marriage is and all that. Yeah. All about good relationships.
All
first
about
and foremost.
good relationships. And man, life is too short. You get one spin around the sun. I can't imagine being in a relationship for 40, 50 years that you've hated and you just gave your life to it for what?
It's a long time.
For what?
It's a long time.
And I get a lot of messages, obviously more so on like flipping tables and Instagram and stuff, but I get so many messages from older women, like 50, 60, 70s and up, saying, I gave 30 years of my life to this man and this is where it got me. Dude. I took the abuse for 2 decades. And that's your life.
Yeah.
You sacrificed for that relationship. I do not support that at all. And that's men or women. Because the same thing with like, I have a couple male close friends who have been divorced and who were in really abusive relationships, really manipulative relationships. Mm-hmm. Get out.
Run for the hills, man.
And I think sometimes that gets overlooked because there's not the physical threat that women experience. Yep. But man, someone who psychologically tortures you, get out. Yeah. Get out. Like someone told me there's 2 things. Well, I say there's no gold star for suffering, but someone told me recently, and it hit me like a ton of bricks, was that there's no merit in martyrdom.
Yeah. That's a good point. Oh, it's a good saying.
Oh, but anyways.
Speaking of relationships, I just saw Obsession last night.
Oh, did you finally see it? I haven't seen it yet.
We'll talk about it.
I've been like, we'll talk it in the campfire chat.
It's good. It's way better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I've heard good things and also somewhat controversial things. Anyways, we're going to talk about a little bit about Anchorage because Alaska is such a unique place. And Anchorage being what it is the reason that Robert Hansen could be who he was. So picture Alaska in the 1970s, early 80s. Not the Alaska of like the cruise brochures that we see now. That's most of our experiences with Alaska. The real one. So this is mid-boom, mid-gold rush, except the gold was oil this time. In 1968, one of the largest oil fields in North America was discovered at Prudhoe Bay up on the North Slope. To get that oil to market, they built the Andy Jones' grandfather built the Trans-Alaska Pipeline System.
He was one of the guys in charge.
800 miles of pipe from the Arctic Ocean down to the Port of Valdez. Construction ran from 1974 to 77. At its peak, it employed more than 20,000 people and it dumped an ocean of money and men into the state almost overnight. Also, and I didn't get too far way back in the history, but Alaska already had a high percentage of men to women ratio before this happened. But Anchorage was the hub, and a boom town is a very specific kind of place. It fills up fast with people that have no roots there. It's mostly men working brutal rotations, cash in their pockets, thousands of miles from anyone that knew them as a kid. They're lonely with money, and the economy grows up to take that money. Anchorage's 4th Avenue became one of the densest strip of bars, strip clubs, and sex work in the country for a city that size. Locals called it the Tenderloin. There were topless clubs with names like the Wild Cherry and the Great Alaskan Bush Company, which is hilarious. Sorry, that's so funny. And there were a lot of young women who came north for the same reason the men had, because there was money. And here's so important, again, for this case. A boomtown is a place where people arrive and vanish a lot. They come in and out. It's very transient. Workers come for one season and they leave. Dancers move from club to club, city to city. A woman telling her roommate she's headed to the lower 48 and she's not coming back. It was the ordinary background noise of such an economy. So when women in that world start disappearing, the disappearances don't register at first as a pattern. It's a normal part of the turnover. And that is not an accident of the geography. That's just the way these economies work. When the missing woman was a topless dancer or a sex worker, the file, if a file ever was made to begin with, was probably, well, she just left town. She left, she's an adult, she probably just left. A predator could not design a better cover than an Alaskan boomtown. And Robert Hansen didn't have to design it. Anchorage handed it to him. And a little bit more context, which is the landscape itself. Anchorage sits in a bowl between the water and the Chugach Mountains. The second you leave the city grid, you are in some of the most enormous, unpoliced, unforgiving wilderness on the planet. Definitely makes me think of Into the Wild. Glacial rivers, mud flats, muskeg mountains, hundreds of square miles where a body will never be found unless the person who put it there takes you directly to it. Most predators have to hide their crimes in a country built to expose them. Highways, street lights, cameras. Hansen lived in country built to swallow the evidence. Mm-hmm. He was also a pilot as well as a hunter. He knew that country better than the troopers did. So with both of those facts, a population that wouldn't be missed and a landscape that wouldn't give them back, that is really part of the answer to the question we're going to deal with today. How did nobody catch him for 12 years?
12 years, man.
12 years. A little more Anchorage history because the city itself was young and raw and rebuilt in exactly the years that this story takes place. Anchorage barely existed before the 20th century. It started as a railroad construction camp in 1915, and on Good Friday, March 27th, 1964, it was nearly leveled. The Great Alaska Earthquake, magnitude 9.2, remains the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in North America, the second most powerful ever recorded on Earth. It shook for 4 minutes,
Jeez.
Which doesn't seem like a long time until it's an earthquake.
Right.
4 minutes is a long time.
That's a long
time. Long time for an earthquake. Whole downtown blocks dropped and slid. The Turnagain neighborhood slumped into the inlet. Anchorage had to substantially rebuild itself, and it was in the middle of doing that when the oil showed up and changed everything. So the oil was great timing. The city's rebuilding. They need the money. Then this is the city that Robert Hansen moved to in 1967. It was a place remaking itself, growing fast, thin on history and institutions, and the kind of place where you could arrive with a past and just simply leave it in the lower 48. There's one more piece of the human landscape is the demographic. Alaska has, for its entire modern history, had more men than women. It's the most male-skewed state in the country, and it was even more so then. There's an old rueful Alaskan saying about the dating odds for women up there, which says, quote, "The odds are good, but the goods are odd."
That's awesome.
That's fair. You know what?
I want that on a shirt.
I feel like that's expanding a bit. We could put that on a shirt, actually. I have to see if it's a common saying or if it's credited to someone in particular.
Yeah, of course.
But if it's just a common saying, then absolutely. Honestly, I would also apply that to myself.
Yeah.
You know, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, same. I'm definitely talking about something I would wear.
Right, exactly.
You know?
We're gonna do some research, see if we can put that on a shirt. So add the pipeline's tens of thousands of imported male workers to a state that already ran short on women, and you get pressure. A lopsided, cash-heavy, transient male population, and a much smaller number of women, some of whom were making a living off exactly that imbalance in the clubs of 4th Avenue. And again, the Great Alaskan Bush Company is such a great name for a strip club. That is just excellent. They are not, so these are the actual clubs where women in this story worked, and that was the economy Robert Hansen hunted in. So I grew up in Wyoming, which is mining and oil. And so we had the same kind of demographic and also ranches. So it was very, very heavily male skewed in the population, and
Right.
like we're talking like blue collar, hard work, dirty work.
Odd goods.
There's an odd goods. There's a specific type of man that makes up a large percentage of the Wyoming population.
Yeah.
Maybe not quite as rugged as Alaska, but as I was reading and putting this together, I was like, yeah, that sounds familiar. Because I remember leaving Wyoming and I was in college in Virginia. And there was something about the town that felt really weird. And I was like, there's something.
In Virginia?
In Virginia.
Okay.
And what I realized it was there was more cars than pickup trucks.
Oh, God.
And that was what threw me off because I was so used to being in traffic of just
Isn't
pickup
that
trucks.
weird?
Yeah. And I had, like, my brain had picked it up before I could catch up with what I was seeing. So the scale of the boom is the scale of the danger. When oil was struck at Prudhoe Bay in 1968, Alaska went almost overnight from a poor remote state to a state sitting on one of the greatest fortunes of the 20th century. The pipeline that carried it, again, 800 miles of 48-inch steel from Arctic to Valdez, was at the time the most expensive privately financed construction project in history. Building it drew a flood of workers north, and the wages were staggering for that era. This makes me think of the Ice Road Truckers.
Oh, yeah, without
And like,
doubt.
have you guys seen that show?
I love that show.
I used to love that show. So if you haven't seen the show, there are these truckers that work seasons in Alaska. There are certain parts of the Yukon and the Arctic that you can only get to in the heart of winter, driving on ice roads where these rivers and these lakes are completely frozen over, and they drive semi-trucks to these encampments, to these rigs. It's super dangerous work. They get paid a ton, but like the show kind of follows these different drivers coming up
High
for a
risk.
season. Super high risk. And they make this would have been 10, 15 years ago, so they probably make more now. But they were making six figures in a couple months.
Yep. There's also, for anybody who's interested, a really great Liam Neeson movie where he plays an ice road trucker on Netflix.
Really?
Yeah, and by
What's it
great,
called?
I forget. I'll have to look it up. But by great, I mean like
Awful.
bad.
But like it's so bad
Lawrence
it's good.
Fishburne's in it.
What?
I'm like, do these guys owe like the mob or something? Like these
Why
guys
are
are
they in this
huge
movie?
stars. Like, why are they in this Netflix movie? He did two of them.
Yep.
Liam Neeson.
Yep.
I think it's called The Ice Road, if I remember correctly.
Okay, I have to watch it now.
Oh, it's so bad.
I do love some bad TV.
No,
when I'm relaxing.
you're gonna come over. I'm gonna make you watch it. Like you made me watch that damn Brooke Shields movie all those years ago. I've been
Christmas Castle is what he's talking
I've
about.
been plotting for all this time.
Revenge.
Anyway,
But like boom towns, blue collar places like this, and especially big wages with transient workers, always creates the shadow economy of bars, clubs, dancers, and sex work. That is across history. It's a description of what a boom town is. And even if that boom happens in the Middle Ages or a new trade route, the same industry rises up to meet it because there's demand for it. Anchorage's 4th Avenue and Spenard neighborhood filled with exactly that economy. And a lot of young women in it had come north again, the same reason that the men had. That's where the money was.
Yep.
And especially when you have a shortage of women, whether you're a dancer or otherwise, that's where you go. And before we really get into the meat of Robert Hanson's growing up years, how he ended up in Alaska, and his victims, we've talked about this briefly in past episodes, but I want to talk about the less dead, or the NHI, no human involved. So in the study of serial homicide, there's a term coined by criminologist Stephen Egger, the less dead. It describes victims that predators preferentially select and society preferentially ignores. Sex workers, the homeless, runaways, addicts, migrants, hitchhikers, the poor, women of color, indigenous women, anyone whose disappearance a community has been trained to kind of read as unremarkable if we even hear about it. Yeah. So many times we just don't hear about it. The less dead are, in Egger's grim phrase, people who were treated as less than alive to begin with, so their deaths register as less of a loss. Predators are not stupid. They're pattern matchers, and the pattern they match on is who will be looked for. You can watch this through the whole catalog. We talked about this with Gary Ridgway, murdered at least 49 women in Washington state, overwhelmingly sex workers and runaways, and told investigators that he chose them because he believed he could kill as many as he wanted without getting caught, because nobody would report them. And he flat out said it. And he was right for 2 decades.
God.
So many people.
Just like, what a thing to say.
I know. And to
you
just
know?
be like, oh, well, I just figured you wouldn't look for him. It's just like, what?
God.
What? And in Alaska, this pattern has a specific ongoing sharpened edge. Alaska Native and American Indian women are murdered and go missing at rates that dwarf the national average. The Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Crisis, or you've probably seen the abbreviation MMIW, is not history. It's actively happening right now. And not just in Alaska, but Alaska is one of the states heavily affected by this. Alaska has one of the highest rates of this in the country, and a long documented pattern of those cases getting less investigative urgency, less press, less everything. When I tell you Anchorage was structured so that certain women could vanish without the state engaging or law enforcement, it's not like a closed chapter that just happened in Robert Hanson's era. It's happening right now.
Wow.
And we see, I mean, everywhere that there is a concentration of indigenous groups, the women in this country are disappearing at an exorbitantly high rate. And it never makes the news. Never makes the news. So when we talk about Robert Hanson targeting dancers and sex workers, it's not a category, it's a strategy. He didn't kill, quote, prostitutes. He killed Sherry and Paula and Sue and Tammy and Angela and Robin because he knew that by targeting them, people probably would never know their names. As soon as we know their names, we personify them.
Yep,
There's
100%.
more humanity. And so he used this anonymity as well as the industry to get away with it. And I just thought that was really important to cover before we kind of dive into Robert Hanson himself.
It's very important to cover that. Robert Christian Hanson was born on February 15th, 1939 in Estherville, Iowa, a small town in Emmett County up in the northwest corner of that state near the Minnesota line. His father, Christian Hanson, Chris, was a Danish immigrant and a baker. That trade is going to follow Robert his entire life. It is the baker in Butcher Baker, and it is not incidental. It is one of the only things his father ever handed him that stuck. The fullest account of his childhood we have is the book Butcher Baker, written by Walter Gilmore, an Alaskan state trooper who worked the case, and writer Leland Hale. That'd probably be interesting to check out.
Yeah. Well, the dominant source for this is Butcher Baker by Gilmore.
Wow. It's the closest thing to, like you said, a primary source on the man's life because Gilmore was inside the investigation. Yeah, it doesn't get any more close than that, does it? It's, I was there. In that account, in the contemporaneous reporting, a consistent picture of the father emerges. Strict, domineering, authoritarian, religious, in the disciplinarian sense. You know, all the stuff that makes these guys turn out really good.
Always seems to turn out right.
Paging Augusta Gein. He put young Robert to work in the bakery early. And when I mean early, I mean early. Some accounts have him starting shifts around 2 a.m. on school days as a boy. Eesh.
Oof.
Two things marked Robert physically, and both mattered enormously to how he saw himself. The first was a pronounced stutter, the kind that makes a child terrified to be called on, an easy and permanent target. The second, hitting in adolescence, was severe cystic acne that left his face scarred for the rest of his life. That's awful. And a third detail appears in the case literature, though not in every source. He was naturally left-handed and was pressured to switch to his right hand, the way a lot of kids were made to in that era.
My dad did that to my younger brother.
Yeah.
Forced him to switch over to his right hand.
I want to say that I started out left-handed, and then I wasn't like forced or like, you're going to be right-handed.
Yeah.
But I think it was suggested. I don't know that. I'd have to ask my parents.
Yeah. No, my dad would like make my younger, like my brother, if he saw my brother using his left hand for like scissors or writing, he'd get in trouble. And he would make my brother sit down and write like pages and pages and pages with his right hand.
Left hand is of the devil, right? So,
hail Satan!
Oh my God! Let's see, where were we here? Okay, some accounts blame the stutter on the hand switching. That casual claim it's unproven. That's just kind of a rumor. The fact underneath it stands: one more daily correction telling a boy that what he was at his core was wrong. Yeah, you don't do that. Put it together: a kid who couldn't get a sentence out without other kids laughing, a face he was ashamed of, and in the timeline, the researchers assembled a specific wound. He was teased by girls. God, That's what did it. Age 12, humiliated at school over the stutter, girls teasing him, hating school. Age 14, a loner, strict religious parents, and no money keeping him out of everything social. He graduated high school in 1957 in a class of 31. And a detail that is grimly on the nose, his name was misspelled in the yearbook.
That kind of, dude... That does kind of suck. I know this guy's a dirtbag, but at this point he wasn't. And I feel bad for him as a kid.
Yeah.
That's rough. School's hard enough. Like, I can't imagine going through school with a stutter and the way that kids are so vicious sometimes.
Yep.
And I got adult onset acne in my early 20s, and it was awful. Oh my God, it was awful. And so, like, I kind of feel bad for him. And then for your name to be misspelled in the yearbook. Like, your parents don't have any money, so you don't get to do anything social. No. You get picked on all the time. I'm not manosphere like justifying this. I have empathy.
You sure? No, I'm just
I have
kidding.
empathy for the high school Robert, because that fucking sucks.
Yeah, he's just a kid.
He's just a kid.
He hasn't done anything yet.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's just, oh God, that's rough.
But the girl teasing does seem to be something he couldn't let go of.
That was probably, that was a seed that was planted.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not
Women
obviously
owe
not
him for the rest of his
justifying-
life because a 12-year-old broke his heart.
Jesus, get the fuck over it. That's okay. Time out. That's my thing. People hold on to so much stuff. Move forward. I was talking with my girlfriend about this last night. We were kind of with the Obsession movie. I'm like, fucking get over it and move the fuck forward.
Yep.
Like, I
Yep.
know some stuff's hard, but dude, are you going to be like, just be chained to this thing for the rest of your life? This big, like Jacob Marley, like, you know,
Right.
pulling stuff behind you, or just fucking cut the rope,
Just let it
move
go.
forward.
Yep.
God.
Oh,
man.
like it's just, and it's we see it so much. I feel like now, you know, people will hold on to whatever hurt it is,
Yeah.
and then just take it out on everybody
Yeah.
they encounter. And it's like, it may be something that was done to you that was really terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
At a certain point, though, you can't keep punishing innocent people
Yeah.
who
Exactly.
didn't do that to you.
Exactly. I mean, and I'm not
Crazy, dude.
perfect, but I'm talking for myself here. You know, I had to let some stuff go, and I felt so much better when I did. Just people move the fuck forward.
Yep.
You know, don't be chained by this stuff for the rest of your life. I mean,
Especially when it comes from fucking like middle school and high school.
yeah.
Bruh,
Oh,
my
yeah.
brother in Christ.
It's pathetic.
Let it go, dude.
Let it go.
Find a hobby.
Do something, but don't go out and
Jesus.
kill people. You know, whatever. It's just
Or whatever it is.
I didn't mean to digress there. It's just that's been on my mind lately, and you see stuff online, and it's like, what are you doing, man?
Yep. And it's
Move
one of those
forward.
things. It's one of those things that sometimes like things like this lead to somebody just being cantankerous, right? They're
Yeah.
just maybe not pleasant to be around. But this type
Me.
of thing,
No, I'm just
especially, it's like you're just a vampire.
Yeah, pretty
But
much.
with certain people, but and again, statistically, more so men not letting these things go, especially when you're raised in an environment that the only emotions you're allowed to have are anger and frustration, actually leads to violence.
It does.
And it does hurt other people.
It absolutely does.
That's why I'm such a big fan of like, you know, you see like this kind of wave of parents that are really talking to their sons about emotions and letting their sons cry. Give them a way to process life instead of with their fist.
Yeah.
You know, because that's the danger of this, you know, and obviously women do the same thing as far as they can really hold on to something and take it out on people, but it doesn't typically turn into physical harm. And so, you know, you end up in a cycle. And again, over a 12-year-old girl who made fun of you, probably because she was insecure too. And she had braces and she was freaking out and you were somebody she could redirect that attention from. You don't know.
Can you imagine your life derailing because some 12-year-old girl called you pizza face or something?
Right, exactly.
Pizza face. Like, come on.
I
man.
got bullied so bad in 7th grade.
Yeah.
Like, you just gotta let it go, man.
Nobody really bullied me. They were afraid of me, which was great. What's going to happen when John
I can
snaps?
see that. I can see that. They're like, you know what? I actually don't want to piss him off.
And I was, you know, like I said, nice. In high school, I didn't have any long hair or facial hair, you know, even
Yeah.
though, you know, they made me shave one day. I'm like, Jesus has a beard. And, you know, then they really liked that.
Yeah,
But
I'm sure they were big fans.
Yeah, they're like,
well, see, I
heretic.
like in middle school, especially. So I was 10 in 7th grade. So I was way younger than everybody, and I was
I was
really
like 14.
I was 87. No, I was kidding. I was really soft spoken at the time. I was really shy. I was in a new school.
Can't imagine.
So, and I was also like short, nerdy, and overweight, and younger than everyone.
It's so weird.
And so
to
I
imagine.
just got hammered
Oh,
here.
God.
Beersford, South Dakota. I haven't forgotten you bitches. Speaking of holding on to grudges.
Meanwhile,
Akita joke.
Uh-huh.
But it was, you know, it was a really tough year. And, you know, I struggled freshman year in high school and then freshman year of college, but not because people were cruel to me. Middle school was where like I really struggled with other kids' cruelty.
Mhm.
But those 2 years were because of it was one of those big transition moments. And I was so much younger than everyone else.
Yeah.
And even though like intellectually I did a good job, I was really well behaved. I was pretty good at adapting to circumstances. You're still fucking young.
oh, yeah, totally.
You know, I was 12 when I started my freshman year in high school.
Jeez.
And like, you're just not ready for some of that.
Yeah, that'd be so weird.
Yeah. And then I was 16 my freshman year in college. And so I always had a year that was real bumpy in these big transition
Yeah,
phases
That's understandable.
because you're trying to catch up to everyone else. Plus, you're in a new place, new education, harder work. You get it.
Where'd you go to middle school? Where'd you say?
Beersford, South Dakota.
If you're booking a flight to South Dakota and asking me to watch the cats, I'm gonna keep an eye out.
Right, just eyes forward.
Like, okay.
Anyways, all that to say,
Sorry.
I feel bad for him as a kid.
Yep.
But you also got to let that shit go.
Sorry, totally digressed. And that's the thing. Let stuff go. So the girl teasing detail is load bearing for this entire case, though obviously not an excuse. Every investigator and psychiatrist who later examined Robert came back to the same place, that an enormous amount of what he did as an adult was aimed at a version of the girl who wouldn't look at him in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Killing the same person over and over and over.
God. The other side is just as important. A hard childhood is not a murder. Millions of people are stuttering, scarred, bullied, lonely teenagers, and essentially none of them grow up to hunt human beings across a glacial floodplain.
Correct.
The childhood is context, not cause. What Hansen did with the pain was a series of choices he made as an adult over and over for more than a decade, but are true at once. After high school, he enlisted in the Army Reserve in 1957. About a year of service, no combat. Sources disagree on where he did basic. One says Fort Dix. Fort Dix. Sorry.
Fort Richard.
In Jersey. Another Fort Polk in Louisiana. Back home in Iowa around 1959 and 1960, he worked in his father's bakery. And improbably, he served as a drill instructor for a junior police program and was a volunteer fireman in Pocahontas. A man who would spend the rest of his life outrunning cops and setting a fire started out teaching kids to be police officers and volunteering to put fires out. That's ironic because in 1960 at 21, he set one, actually. So on December 7th, 1960, Robert Hansen burned down a Pocahontas County School District bus garage. That'll show him. The County Board of Education's bus barn. The motive across every account is the same: revenge. Revenge for his unpopularity, for the humiliation, for high school. He didn't do it entirely alone. The case literature has him enlisting a teenage boy who worked at his father's bakery. He was caught. He was convicted of arson. He was sentenced to 3 years and sent to Anamosa State Penitentiary in Iowa, where he served roughly 20 months before his release around 1962. It's just move again. Say it with me, everybody. Move the fuck on. And here's a fact that fed the machine. He had married his first wife the same year, 1960.
The same year as the fire.
Yeah, same year as the fire. While he sat in Anamosa, she divorced him and was gone. Out the door. Her name is not in any source I could find. She is, in the record of this man's life, an unnamed woman who got out early and wisely. And I hope she stayed gone and had a good life. That's kind of odd, though, that within these cases that there's like this Jane Doe, if you will. Like, we don't know who this person is.
Yeah.
But to Robert Hansen and the grim internal accounting of a man who had already believed women abandoned and betrayed, it was more evidence for the case he was building against half the human race. One more thread, and it matters at the very end. Robert Hansen was a compulsive thief, a kleptomaniac, caught stealing more than once over the years, taking things he didn't need and could easily have paid for. You know, kind of like H.H. Holmes did that, if I remember correctly, and the dreaded Winona Ryder.
Yes, Winona.
I'm just kidding. After his release, he remarried. His second wife was Darla Marie Henriksen, and the best supported year for that marriage is 1963. Darla was, by every account, a decent, hardworking, unsuspecting woman who believed she had married a quiet baker. Don't they all? They would have 2 children together whose names have been kept private, and I'm going to keep them private too. And in 1967, Robert and Darla moved to Anchorage. New start, last frontier. The place where nobody had heard of the bus barn or the stutter or really any of the past, right? In Anchorage, Hansen built the double life. On the surface, the transformation was total and, to his neighbors, completely convincing. He worked the baking trade and eventually ran his own shop, Hansen's Bakery, at 828 East 9th Avenue on the corner of 9th and Ingra. He was a family man. He went to church. He was quiet, awkward, hardworking, the kind of small business owner a Chamber of Commerce puts on a flyer. Nobody's monster. BTK. Sorry,
Right.
a little
Smotch.
Yeah.
I also want to say about regarding his first wife. So a couple sources, I couldn't find her maiden name.
Okay.
Some list her
Weird.
as her first name is Janice. Some said Jane. I don't know if Jane was short or if it was 2 different names, but it was really difficult to verify any information on her. But for those of you that are familiar with the case, there is some sources that say Janice or Jane, but I could not find her maiden name and confirm it. It was very strange. But allegedly
Lost
it's Janice or Jane, or maybe she went by Jane. But that's all I could find that I felt was reliable enough to include.
Also at this time, he became a hunter, but not a casual one, a serious, accomplished, record-setting big game bow hunter. This piece of his cover did double duty, and it's exactly the kind of detail that gets garbled in the retellings. In 69, 70, and 71, Hansen had 4 animals entered in the record book of the Pope and Young Club. That's crazy. That this organization that keeps bow hunting records, the archery counterpart to Boone and Crockett. He was known in Alaskan hunting circles for a record-class Dall sheep taken with archery equipment, and he kept them out in his home. You'll see it repeated online that he took it with a crossbow, but that's wrong. Pope and Young in that era recognized hand-drawn bows, not crossbows. So a crossbow kill wouldn't have made their book. Bow and arrow is the defensible fact.
And that's very hard to do.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if I don't know if anyone here, we have any archery hunters, really, really tough. Really tough to get anything. I went crossbow hunting once, and that was hard enough. I can't imagine doing it with a compound bow.
Yeah. Just even like pulling some of that back.
Yeah.
The poundage you have to do.
Yeah.
It's nuts. So Alaska worships the skilled outdoorsman, and Hansen wore that admiration like armor. But look at what hunting actually gave him: status, a reason to own an arsenal, a reason to own a small plane and disappear into the bush alone for days at a time and have nobody ask a single question. And the one skill sets his crime what actually require: tracking, stalking, and killing a living thing as it flees across open country. His cover and his method were the same hobby. That is the whole horror of Robert Hansen in one sentence. The thing his community admired him for and the thing he did to those women were the same skill. Yeah, that's the... Now, Darla and the architecture of a double life. There's a lazy version of this part and a true version, and the true version is way more disturbing. So the lazy version is that Hansen fooled everyone with a perfect mask, but that's not quite what the record shows. What the record, particularly Leland Hale's research into Darla, shows is a marriage that had quietly hollowed out from the inside. The couple, by Darla's own account to Sergeant Floth, lived largely separate financial and personal lives. The bakery money, she said, was Bob's separate money, Robert. She had her own work. She tutored and taught children, including kids with learning disabilities. And she carried the household and the 2 children substantially on her own. They were functionally 2 adults sharing an address, and crucially, the family was often away. Darla and the children took trips, including one out of state and abroad, and those absences are the negative space in which the crimes happen. He didn't need a perfect mask at home. He needed an empty house, and periodically, he had one. So this is the part that I think people will get wrong when they talk about his wife who didn't know. The FBI profile predicted a religious wife, not fully aware of her husband's activities. Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
And that was accurate, but not aware is not the same as complicit. Darla Hansen is a victim of this man, too, in a category of her own. She married a quiet baker in the aftermath of his arson conviction. Whether she knew the history, we don't know for sure, and she built a life and raised 2 children with a man who was, on the night she was away, flying women into the wilderness to hunt them. When it came out, she cooperated with the troopers. She eventually divorced him and left Alaska. Reports placed the harassment and the divorce filing in the years after his conviction, with her finally leaving the state around 1990. Consider her position. Her husband had turned out to be one of the worst serial murderers in American history, and now her neighbors in her state looked at her as if this monster shadow were on her too. She reportedly went on to teach music in Arkansas. I really hope she found some peace. Yeah. She is one more person whose life this man,
I can't imagine.
Affected.
We talked about Julie Baumeister early in this, where but I do think that there's so many of these wives or partners who had no idea what was going on.
No, I don't think so.
And this also reminds me of the Gilgo Beach killer.
Yeah.
Because he would do this when his wife was gone and when the kids would take trips, and he would be home working on Long Island and would abduct people. It's just, tough. But also, ladies, let me be your internet auntie here for a second. If he's been convicted of arson, it's a no-go. It's a no-go. It's a red flag. It's a tent of red flags. I advise no.
No to the arson charge.
Yeah, no to the arson charge.
Don't date that arsonist.
I do recommend background checks. Background checks for everybody.
Like, you get a background check. And you get one. Oprah's out here throwing them out.
Yeah.
So, and then there's the diagnosis, which gets pulled in 2 directions and deserves an honest accounting. During his 1970s theft arrest, Hansen was psychiatrically evaluated and diagnosed with what the report calls manic depression, bipolar disorder with periodic schizophrenic episodes. Just like, interesting. And he was prescribed lithium. Now, the overwhelming majority of people with bipolar disorder or schizophrenia are not violent, are far more likely to be victims of violence than perpetrators, and the stigma that links mental illness to serial murder is genuinely harmful and mostly false. Robert Hansen did not kill because he was mentally ill. The colder truth is this, that his diagnosis was used functionally as a reason for the courts to keep going easy on him. Yeah, it's a mental health label, and this, in his case, didn't get him meaningful treatment or meaningful supervision. It got him a lighter sentence and quicker release, and then he quickly went back out and it just kept escalating. The system used the diagnosis as a reason for leniency towards a man who was actively dangerous while offering nothing that actually contained the danger. It's freaking crazy. So here's the part of the biography where the system had him repeatedly and just let him walk. In December 1971 in Anchorage, Hansen attacked 2 women in short order. The first was a young woman named Susan Heppard. Hale described her as a real estate secretary, though secondary accounts vary on her age and even the spelling of her name. It's amazing to me like how there's like just this so much lost information on this case. Like we don't know the first wife.
Before digital recording.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's so true. But I feel like even in some of the older cases, we never really have this pop up of like, oh, we don't know if that's how to spell her name or what.
I think there's been a couple cases where finding a first spouse was really tough, or like you couldn't find their information, but it's pretty rare.
Yeah, I probably know a couple. I'm just drawing a blank right now. It just it strikes me as odd with this one. So Hansen followed her home and came back with a pistol intending to kidnap her. He was charged, and the count he ultimately answered to was assault with a deadly weapon, to which he pleaded no contest. The second, while out on his own recognizance for the first attack, out free awaiting resolution, he abducted a young sex worker named Patricia Roberts at gunpoint from the Nevada Tavern in downtown Anchorage, drove her out to Kenai Lake area, tied her up, took her to a motel, and raped her. The rape charge was dropped in a plea deal.
Which is fucking insane. Are you joking me? Like, listen.
Motherfucker did it.
Brief soapbox here. So, as of this recording, the Tate brothers just got arrested in Miami.
I saw that.
Okay. And now they're being extradited to the UK to face more rape and sex trafficking charges, in addition to the ones that they're facing in Romania. Yeah.
Yeah, Romania.
So,
right.
Then it comes to find out that leading up to them being in Miami, they were partying it up in D.C. with the special envoy to the United States appointed by our president. They were going into Congress, meeting with Congress people, hanging out with them, dapping it up. These are fucking rapists and sex traffickers.
They're in the same companies who they're hanging out with.
Well, yeah. Like, I can't help but the whole, like, I was like, dude, birds of a feather.
Yeah.
But I also, I'm getting to the point, especially with this year, like how many men have been able to walk.
That's disgusting.
Like Epstein files, assaults, all of it. I am to the point now where I don't believe sexual crimes will be prosecuted the way they should unless women hold 50% or more of governance across the country.
I agree with you. I totally agree.
Because this is crazy. Enough is enough. Like, they're wanted in multiple countries for rape and trafficking, and we're just out here like,
let's go hang out in D.C.
They should be facing charges here, but they won't.
No, of course not.
But they won't. Anyways, sorry, I just needed to get that out.
No, you're good. I mean, that's an important thing to talk about. I agree about the holding 50% of governance. I mean, it's a fucking boys club of bullshit.
Well, and I think you can also make the argument that, because one of the foundational principles is no taxation without representation. Women are 51% of the population. So if we aren't represented in our governance even close to that, then are we actually being fully represented?
No, not at all.
So
I agree.
It was a whole team of dudes who make reproductive health decisions. So
gotta love that.
There is that. That's fun.
Anyway, before I pop a blood vessel, let's keep going on with this. The sequence is the template for everything that follows, and it is already fully formed in 1971. A respectable woman he stalks and tries to abduct, charge pled down. A sex worker he actually kidnaps and rapes, charged out the window, dropped entirely. The justice system, a joke, presented with the same man attacking 2 women, decided the assault on the secretary was the real crime, and the rape of the sex worker was barely a crime at all. He was sentenced to 5 years and served, depending on the source, somewhere between 3 and 6 months before being placed on work release.
Jesus Christ.
He's a good guy. Oh, he's done his time. Let him out. He's reformed. Fuck you. And then there's the theft. In 1976, again, some sources say 77, he was caught stealing a chainsaw That's not ominous. From a Fred Meyer store in Anchorage and pleaded guilty to larceny. Sentenced to 5 years, served about 1. And during that arrest and incarceration, he was psychiatrically evaluated and diagnosed. The reports describe manic depression, what we now call bipolar disorder, with periodic schizophrenic episodes. He was prescribed lithium, and the diagnosis became a reason to go easy on him, like we had been talking about. So when people ask the central question of this case, how was Robert Hansen not caught for 12 years? Part of the answer is that he was caught. They had him again and again. He was convicted arsonist, a diagnosed compulsive thief, a man who had pleaded to assaulting one woman with a deadly weapon and had a rape charge dropped in the same stretch of months. All of that was in the file. And each time the system looked at the quiet married baker with mental health diagnosis and the good lawyer and decided that he wasn't worth holding. No, he's not that bad. Somewhere in the late 1970s, the exact starting point we will never know because his earliest victims were never found or never identified. The assault stopped being enough, and Robert Hansen started killing.
And I do want to put a caveat in that as well. Like, obviously, there's the mental health, reason that they're kind of going easy on him, but also because he was a white dude. Like a black man would never get away with something like that.
No.
Or even I learned this the other day, and it blew my mind that when intimate partner violence, the average amount of time that a man spends if he murders his partner and spends in jail, I believe the average, I can't remember the bottom number. I want to say it's 5. I think it's 5 to 7 years in that range, but it's single digits.
For murder?
For murder.
Holy shit. If
a woman kills her abuser, intimate partner, the average is 15 years or more. And 30% of women who kill their partner, even in documented history of abuse, 30% of them get life in prison. Only 19% of men do.
Holy crap.
So I think it's important too when we talk about the justice system going easy on people.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. I'm going to double check that really quick. I want to know exactly what that range is.
Dude, that's nuts.
Oh, here it is. The national average sentence for men who kill their female intimate partners ranges from 2 to 6 years.
2 years?
Yep.
God.
Yeah. And then the average 15-year sentence handed to women who kill their male partners, often in self-defense or after prolonged abuse.
That's fair.
Yes. Let's talk about the crimes and the victims. So Robert Hansen would end up confessing to 17 murders. The number comes from his 1984 confession, and the Alaska State Troopers have repeated that number ever since. He was formally charged with and pleaded guilty to 4, the 4 for which investigators had hard physical evidence. 12 bodies were ultimately recovered. Investigators have said they believe the true count may run higher than 17, possibly around 21. Separate from the killings, it is estimated that he raped or assaulted more than 30 other women across his active years. The gaps between those numbers sort his victims into 3 groups. So there's the confirmed and recovered, the ones he admitted killing whose bodies weren't found, and then the suspected. So women whose cases fit him, but he is either denied or he was never charged with, and so they're not 100% sure. He was the only person who will ever know that whole list. And let's start with the chronology, starting in December of 1971. December 22nd, 1971 was the month Robert Hansen attacked Susan Hepburn that we talked about earlier and abducted and raped Patricia Roberts. So same month. It is also the month that Celia Van Zanten disappeared. Celia, who went by Beth Van Zanten, was 18 years old, a student at Anchorage Community College living in South Anchorage. The people who knew her described her as outgoing and extroverted. On the night of December 22nd, 1971, just 3 days before Christmas, she left home around 8:30 to walk to a nearby Bi-Lo store and buy soda. This is a 10-minute walk, 10-minute errand. She was last seen walking on Northern Lights Boulevard around 9 o'clock. She never reached the store and she never came home. On Christmas Day, 1971, her body was found in the Chugach State Park. She had been bound, she had been sexually assaulted, and she had been left alive in a ravine in an Alaskan December, and she died of exposure.
Eesh.
Her family spent Christmas Eve calling hospitals and police, and on Christmas morning, they learned their daughter had been left in the mountains to freeze to death.
Odd.
She is frequently named as Hansen's possible first victim. Same city, same month he was actively attacking women. A young woman grabbed off the street at night. Hansen denied it. He was never charged. And the method doesn't cleanly match what he would later confess to, which is she was bound and abandoned to exposure in a park. So she is suspected, not confirmed. But again, considering the violence that he was also doing to other women during that month, she is suspected as a Robert Hansen victim. July 7th of 1973, Megan Emmerich was in Seward, which is a port town about 225 miles south of Anchorage at the head of the Resurrection Bay, hemmed in by mountains and water. Megan Emmerich was 17. She was from Delta Junction, Alaska, and she was a student at Seward Skill Center. She liked hunting and fishing and motorcycle and rock music. She was an Alaskan kid. She liked the outdoors. She's, kind of rugged. On July 7th, 1973, she was last seen leaving her dormitory laundry room. She left everything behind, all of her personal belongings, her ID. That detail is the one investigators always seized on with her because it is the difference between a girl who leaves and a girl who is taken. Nobody walks away from their own midlife laundry with no ID, no purse, no bag. In our cases, it would be no phone. Police eventually came to believe she'd been buried somewhere near Resurrection Bay. Megan Emmerich has never been found. Her case is still carried by the Doe Network and the Charlie Project, still open for more than 50 years. 2 years later, July 5th, almost a year to the day, July 5th, 1975, Mary Kathleen Thill was 22. She lived out on Lower Point Road. Her husband was working in the Trans-Alaska pipeline on the North Slope. The arrangement half the marriages in Alaska ran on in those years. The man had gone north for a few weeks at a stretch, the wife holding down the fort. On July 5th of 1975, a friend dropped her off downtown at the Seward Bakery. She was last seen near the Lowell Point waterfall about 1:30 or 2 in the afternoon in broad daylight in a town of a few thousand people. She was never seen again, and she's never been found. What ties Emmerich and Till to Robert Hansen is this. His parole records placed him in Seward on those relevant days. Sergeant Glenn Floth, the trooper who eventually broke this case, noted that Hansen's documented pattern of stalking ordinary women, not just sex workers, fit both of them exactly. And there is an account that Hansen admitted the Emmerich killing to a fellow inmate. But officially, Hansen denied both. Leland Hale, co-author of the definitive book on this case, files Emmerich and Till under denied by Hansen, even though a lot of popular list articles fold them into his victim group. So they stay where the evidence leaves them. Again, these are suspected, uncharged, unresolved. 2 young women who vanished from a laundry room and a downtown sidewalk in a town of a few thousand, and nobody has been ever able to account for either. 3 cases 4 years apart, and not one of them connected to the others at the time. And then we get into the first confessed murder. The first murder Robert Hansen confessed to belongs to a woman whose name we still do not know. Investigators called her Eklutna Annie after the place they found her. By his own account, he killed her in late 1979 or early winter of 1980, which makes her the beginning. And here's everything that we know about her. Again, this is not her name. This was the name given to her by investigators. She was small, somewhere between 4'11" and 5'3". Young, the estimate range is mid-teens to mid-20s, light brown to strawberry blonde hair, probably white, possibly with some native heritage. When they found her, she was dressed for an Anchorage night out, brown leather hip-length jacket, a light knit sleeveless top, blue jeans, a red knee-high zip-up boots. She was wearing a turquoise bracelet, a copper shell beaded necklace, a little heart pendant, a Timex watch, a shell ring, twisted hoop earrings. In her pocket was a box of Salem matches. Investigators believe she was a topless dancer or a sex worker working what Anchorage called the track. Somebody strung those shell beads. Somebody gave her that heart pendant. She got dressed that night, the red boots, the hoops, and she had no idea, obviously, that it would be the last time. She was found buried in a shallow grave beside a power line about a mile south of the South Eklutna Lake Road, near the native village of Eklutna, north of Anchorage, which is why she's called Eklutna Annie.
Right, makes sense.
The discovery date is given either as July 17th or July 21st of 1980, depending on the source. Her body was badly decomposed. Hansen would later say that he stabbed her once in the back with a black-handled buck knife when she tried to run from his car, which means that she fought, she ran, she almost got away. And that's really the last thing that we know about her. As of the most recent reporting, Eklutna Annie is still unidentified. Facial reconstructions have been made of her. Names have been proposed and checked and ruled out of other missing women that did not fit her. She is the only one of Hansen's recovered victims who has never been given her name back. She is buried as Jane Doe in Anchorage Memorial Park Cemetery. Some people, there's been some sources and some articles, more so blog posts, that say Eklutna Annie is Robin Pelkey. That's not true. Pelkey was a different woman. Her story ends differently. Just so you know, if you're familiar with this case, this is not Robin Pelkey. And then May 19th, 1980, Joanna Messina was 24. You'll see her name spelled as Joanna or Joanne, depending on the source. She was from New York. The accounts describe her as a former nurse who had left her family behind and come north. Again, the classic Alaska reset. This one state's been, there's gold rush, there's money, there's work to be had. She had a German Shepherd with her and was working seasonally at a cannery in Seward. A woman from New York gutting fish on the Kenai Peninsula with her dog, a long way from wherever she started. On May 19th, 1980, she was last seen at the Seward docks. That's where Hansen said they met, that he ran into her at the docks and invited her to dinner. Not a club, not the track, a dock in the daylight. Again, doing your normal day-to-day business. And a dinner invitation from what seemed like a polite, unremarkable, married-looking man. On July 8th of 1980, Joanna Messina's body was found in a gravel pit near Seward. She was badly decomposed. She had been shot. The record indicates with a .22 revolver. Her dog had been killed too. He also killed her dog. She wasn't a dancer. She wasn't a sex worker. She was a traveler at a dock with a German Shepherd, and that was enough to put her on his list. He saw her, he was attracted to her, and that was all it took. And that's the other thing about all this rhetoric that we see online and in kind of common discourse of like, well, what were you wearing? Well, what were you doing? You shouldn't have been out drinking. It doesn't fucking matter. If you meet the wrong person at the wrong time, it doesn't matter if it's broad daylight at a bookshop. That person's going to come after you because it's their fault, not yours.
Not even meeting him. If the wrong person sees you.
Yeah.
It's like ridiculous. Like every time we go into this stuff, man, it makes you like leery to leave your house. I'm not going outside.
And there's a quote, and I do not know who quoted this, so if you want to know, you can look it up. But it's something along the lines of, it says, "Was it my fault?" the miniskirt asked.
Yeah.
The burqa responded, "No, it happened to me too." And the diaper in the corner was too young to speak. And that's just the way I hate the language around, well, what did she do? It's not her.
She's the victim, you asshole.
And that's the only crime we do that on, right? If my car gets broken into, people are like, oh my God, are you okay? Did you lose anything? Did they take it? That's the first thing people ask. They don't ask, well, where did you park it?
What were you doing in that neighborhood?
Why do you have a car? You shouldn't be driving a car.
That's a funny looking kitchen, lady.
Oh my God. Fuck you. Anyways.
Obviously, that's not me saying that.
But it's on the nose for the rhetoric that we hear.
Yeah.
June 28th, 1980. Weeks after Messina, June 28th, 1980, back in Anchorage, Roxanne Eastland was around 24, a dancer, a sex worker who went by several names, including Karen Bonsgard and Robin Lee Eastland, was staying at the Budget Motel with a boyfriend. On June 28th, 1980, she left for a, quote, date, and she had arranged with an unknown man on 4th Avenue downtown. She was reported missing on July 2nd. She's never been found. Hansen admitted to killing her. Her case is also linked to him through the aviation map. But with no body, Roxanne Eastland sits in that second category we mentioned, where it's been admitted but never recovered. There's no grave to visit, and there was no autopsy or physical proof. For years, investigators wondered whether she might be Eklutna Annie, which we mentioned before. She was tested and ruled out. So those two women stay in separate categories of his victim pool. September 6th or 7th, 1980, Lisa Futrell, some records give her the name Betty, might have been a nickname, was 41 years old. Her age matters because one widely circulated article gets it wrong and calls her 24. But reliable records put her birth in 1939, which makes her 41. She was old enough to be the mother of most of the other women in this story. She worked the Anchorage nightclubs, including the Great Alaskan Bush Company. She left work one night with an evening date planned. She didn't come back. That's it. That's the whole record of her disappearance. A middle-aged woman finishing a shift and walking into a plan that she had made. Lisa Futrell's remains weren't recovered until May 9th, 1984, almost 4 years later, found south of the Old Nick River Bridge during the search that came after everything unraveled, which means that from 1980 to 1984, she was officially nothing. She wasn't a homicide. She wasn't a missing person of interest. She was just someone who the people that knew her didn't see again. July of 1981, Malay Larson was 28 years old, born on August 30th, 1955, and that is nearly the entire documented record of her life, which was, again, it's just sad that some of these people we don't have as much information on. She was reported missing on July 10th, 1981. Her remains were recovered on April 24th, 1984, in a parking area near the Old Nick Bridge, one of the sites Hansen himself would eventually point troopers to. And again, someone's daughter, someone who grew up and had dreams of her own, and we don't know that much about her. November 17th, 1981, Sherry Morrow was 23. Some sources say 24. She was a topless dancer at a club called the Wild Cherry, and her boyfriend, Dale Yonkowski, would drive her to work and drop her off. She told friends she was going to meet a man, a photographer. He had offered her $300 to pose for nude photographs. $300, so camera, private session, in a boomtown where the dancer was making money but never enough. That's a good night's work for an hour of your time. That's a pretty good rate, especially in the 80s. She went to meet him on November 17th, 1981. She never came back. She was reported missing about a week later on the 23rd. For 10 months, nothing. And then on September 12th, 1982, hunters walking back from the banks of the Nick River found a shallow grave. The spot was reachable by vehicle, by riverboat, and by airplane. In the grave was Sherry Morrow. She was identified on September 27th, 1982, through her dental records.
God, it's always the photography scam, though,
I
too.
know.
Always.
And I experienced that when I first started modeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I did more so print modeling and bridal modeling, but you end up in these rooms with photographers. And when you're young and you're naive and you have a dream, you don't know any better. And like, I had several photographers try to do like nudes with me or topless stuff. Like, and you don't know any better. Like if you don't have someone fending for you, you one either may not know any better, or if it's a lot of money and you're someone who's poor and they know that, then they're going to prey on you that way. Of course. It's just unfortunate. So, but her gravesite had several things that would help build the case later on. So the first was a spent shell casing lying in the grave with her body. It was a .223 caliber casing, the round fired by a Ruger Mini 14 and similar rifles. The second was she was found fully clothed, but there were no bullet holes in her clothing. She had been shot 3 times in the back. She was not wearing the clothes when she was killed. She was nude when she was shot. And afterwards, somebody dressed her body and buried it. That takes time. And then the third, from the case documents, her face had been wrapped in an elastic ace bandage. The troopers now had a murdered dancer in a remote grave beside a glacial river, shot with a .223, blindfolded and redressed after death, and absolutely no suspect. But the .223 would become a signature. And then Andrea Fish Altieri, December 2nd, 1981. 2 weeks after Sherry Morrow vanished, another dancer disappeared. Andrea Mona Altieri was around 24. Her stage name was Enchantment. She was originally from Hawaii and had come to Alaska in the early 80s, from the warmest place in America to the coldest. It's a choice.
A lady of extremes.
Lady of extremes. On the night of December 2nd, 1981, around 11 o'clock, she took a cab toward the Boniface Mall area to meet an unidentified man who had promised to pay her for a nude photo shoot. Same offer, same city, preying on the same people who need the money. This is only 15 days after Sherry Morrow.
Wow.
Nobody connected them because both women were dancers and dancers leave. Andrea Altieri was never been found. Hansen admitted shooting her, said he weighed her body and dumped it off a bridge, but she left one thing behind that would come back to bury him. She wore a custom-made fish necklace. That's why the people who loved her called her Fish. When investigators finally searched Robert Hansen's house, her belongings were there, including the necklace. He had kept it as one of his trophies. And for 2 years, he kept a dead woman's necklace in his home where his wife cooked dinner, children did homework. And if they came across it, they wouldn't know what it was.
Yeah.
How could they? May 26, 1982, Sue Luna was 23, a dancer at the Good Times Bar, originally from Washington State. On May 26, 1982, she told her roommate she had a date with a man she'd recently met. They were going to meet at Alice's 210 restaurant. She was hoping to make $300. Again, that same number again. Yep. She went. Her remains would be recovered on April 24th, 1984, out near the Nick River and Jim Creek, east of the Old Nick Bridge. The evidence indicates that she was also hunted, nude, and shot.
God.
Crazy. August 1982, Tamara Joy Peterson, who went by Tammy, was 20 years old. She was a nightclub dancer at the Wild Cherry, the same club Sherry Morrow had worked. She was from Washington State. People described her as a free spirit, and unlike so many of the women in this story, she was very close to her family. Her last known contact was a phone call on August 7th of 1982. When Tammy stopped calling, they didn't accept, she probably moved on. Her family uprooted themselves and moved to Alaska to look for her themselves. Wow. Because the people whose job it was to look for her weren't looking. So her family relocated to come find her.
Imagine that. They're dropping the ball again.
Oh, look at that.
The one common thing they have in all these stories.
And by the time they got to Alaska, they were looking for a girl who was already buried on an island in the Nick River.
God.
Her remains were found on April 29th, 1984, about a mile and a half from the Old Nick Bridge, on an island just south of where Sherry Morrow had been found. Angela Feddern, or Angie, was 24 in February of 1983. She was born in Seattle on September 14th, 1958, and came to Alaska in 1979. She worked as an exotic dancer in Fairbanks and in Anchorage. She's linked to a club called Murphy's Law. Her background was hard. There were drugs and sex work, and the way it was for a lot of women who arrived in that economy. She was last seen February 1983 on 4th Avenue. She was reported missing by her employer, not by a family member, but her boss at the club, and her remains were found April 26, 1984, near Figure 8 Lake. Teresa Watson, 22, was born around 1961, was from Sacramento, California. Again, the record on her, like so many of Robert's victims, is pretty thin. She was last seen in Anchorage on March 25th, 1983, and her remains were found on April 26, 1984, in the Scenic Lake area. That's what's left of Teresa Watson as far as the public record goes: a hometown, age, 2 dates, and a lake. Delynn Renee Fry, or Frey, I wasn't able to find how hers is pronounced, and I saw some people have Frey pronounced Fry, some is Frey. I'm going to say Fry. Some people called her Sugar, was somewhere between 19 and 22. She was from Baltimore, a child of divorce, and she worked as a waitress and a dancer. And Delynn Fry had a daughter, a little girl named Christina. She was last seen in March or April of 1983, and of all the women of the story, hers is the longest wait. Her remains wouldn't be found until August 20th of 1985. 2 years later, spotted on the Nick River sandbar by a pilot that was flying over. And even then, she still didn't have a name. She was identified through her jewelry years later in 1989 or 1990, depending on the source. So for Christina, her mother disappears when she's small. 2 years later, a pilot spots remains on a sandbar, and then it takes another 4 to 5 years for a piece of jewelry to say, that's your mom. Christina grew up for most of her childhood while her mother was an unidentified body on a riverbank.
Oh, that's disturbing.
And then somewhere in the winter of 1982 into 1983, Robert Hansen took a 19-year-old named Robin Pelkey. She was born in Colorado in 1963. She lived in Anchorage in the late 70s, moved to Arkansas as a teenager, and then would come back to Alaska in 1981 to stay with her father and stepmother. That arrangement didn't hold, and so she ended up homeless on the streets of Anchorage, a very dangerous area, especially in the winter, to be homeless.
God, no kidding.
19 years old, no address, no safety net in a subarctic city. Hansen described her as a sex worker he abducted from downtown. Her skeletal remains would be found in 1984 near Horseshoe Lake, out toward Little Sistina River, northwest of Anchorage near Palmer. The autopsy could say only this: it was a white female, roughly 17 to 23 years old. She had been stabbed and she had been shot.
God.
And because nobody had reported her missing, the troopers didn't have a name to attach to her. They called her Horseshoe Harriet, and they buried her as an unknown in an Anchorage municipal cemetery. She stayed Horseshoe Harriet for 37 years. We'll get back to that later. She would stay unnamed for a very long time. April 25th, 1983, Paula Goulding was 30 years old. She was born on June 4th, 1951 in Arizona, and she came to Alaska by way of Kona, Hawaii. A lot of Hawaii moving to Alaska in this story. I would stay in Hawaii if I had the choice.
Very strange decision.
And Paula Goulding fits very much into what we were talking about earlier of like, well, this only happens to certain types of women, in quotation marks.
God.
Because Paula was a secretary. She had an office job in Fairbanks, and then she loses her job. In a boomtown, she's got rent due, right? Because rent is up, because money's up. She's got no job. She took work dancing at the Great Alaskan Bush Company for the oldest and most ordinary reason in the world, is that she needed money, and that was where she could make money so that she could eat and pay her rent. She had been an exotic dancer for a very short time when she met Robert Hansen. She was just an ordinary working woman who fell through a trapdoor in the economy and didn't want to starve.
Yeah, understandable.
Her obituary would later say that she was survived by no one in her family. On April 25th, 1983, she was lured out on the usual pretext: a job, a date, money, and Paula fought him. She tried to run. Robert Hansen shot her with a .223 rifle. On September 2nd, 1983, a highway construction crew working near the Nick River found Paula Goulding's body in a shallow grave, and near that grave was another spent .223 shell casing. The map of where these women came from tells you the whole scheme: New York, Washington, Seattle, Sacramento, Baltimore, Arizona, Hawaii, Colorado. These were not, for the most part, Anchorage girls who would have had local families to raise hell. They were women who had come to Alaska from somewhere far away, most of them not very close to their families, which meant that the only person that could notice is a coworker or a boyfriend or a club manager, not their mother. One was a former nurse from New York with a German Shepherd, a former Fairbanks secretary, dancers, young women, a young mother from Baltimore, a homeless 19-year-old. Robert Hansen was just able to identify and move so quickly in a city that just wasn't interested in following up for them. At this point in the story, the troopers have two. They've got two dancers, two shallow graves by the same river, both shot with a .223. Sherry Morrow found that previous September, and now Paula Goulding found now. This was not turnover. They now had actual proof. These women are not leaving. They're not moving to a different club. They're being killed. By the time they found Paula Goulding, they already had sitting in a file, disbelieved, a 17-year-old girl who told them who the hunter was 3 months earlier. Prepare to get mad.
The method is what makes Robert Hansen singular even in the terrible company of serial killers, and it's what Cindy Paulson escaped. Here's a documented pattern assembled from his own confessions, Gilmore and Hale's book, the Trooper Case File, and Cindy Paulson's account of what he did to her before she got away. Hansen would approach a woman, a dancer, a sex worker, someone working downtown, and make a transaction. Money for sex, or as we've seen, money for photographs, the nude photo shoot for $300. Laura comes up time and time again. With Sherry Morrow and Andrea Altieri, and the date for $300 version with Sue Luna. Once she was in the car or his house, the transaction became a gun. He produced a handgun and handcuffs. He'd take her to his home on Old Harbor while his family was elsewhere, and he'd assault her, sometimes for hours. And then, for some of them, came the part that belongs in nightmares. He would load the woman into the Piper Super Cub, the small bush plane he kept at Merrill Field, and he would fly her out. North and east, out over the Nick River country, the Matanuska-Susitna wilderness, that enormous unpoliced landscape we talked about. He'd land on a gravel bar or a rough strip, and then by his own account, he would let her out and let her run and hunt her.
Jesus.
Track her across the country the way he tracked the Dall sheep that made him famous with a .223 Ruger Mini 14 and a knife, and kill her, bury her, and mark the spot on his map.
That is so... I can't imagine the last few minutes, hours, days of your life being spent like that. Just the horror you would feel.
You read too much Rudyard Kipling. What's that? Most Dangerous Game? I think that was a book of his.
Yeah. So now, if you guys have seen like the Criminal Minds episodes, and there's always seemed to be episodes in these crime stories where someone takes people out and hunts them. It's based on old Robert here.
My God. So one phrase needs care because every documentary uses it. You will hear everywhere that Robert Hansen hunted them like animals, hunted them like game, hunted them like prey. When I went looking for the exact sentence, Hansen's saying it in this transcript, I hunted them like game. I could not cleanly confirm that specific verbatim quote in the sources I could reach. So here's the honest version, and it's no less damning. The hunted like game characterization comes from the substance of Hansen's own confession, in which he described releasing and pursuing victims, and from the framing of this Trooper-authored book on the case. And it lines up exactly with what the FBI profiler independently predicted, that the killer was acting out a hunting fantasy. So it's exactly that, a hunt, source to his confession in the case file, not a made-for-TV flourish. He turned women loose in the wilderness and ran them down. That's not an embellishment. That's fact. That is our case.
I think that quote is so important because it's like, he said that.
Yeah.
He was the one that said hunted like game.
Yeah.
And like, obviously that's been, kind of expanded in documentaries and in books and stuff, but he actually said that. That's crazy.
That's just fucked up. Not every victim was flown out and hunted as far as we know. Eklutna Annie, he said, he stabbed after she tried to run from his car. Joanna Messina, he shot near Seward. But the aviation map, the Super Cub, the Nick River graves, and the .223 tell the story of a man who had industrialized a fantasy. He had a kill zone, a vehicle to reach it, a weapon, a disposal system, and a filing system. He was, in the most literal and horrifying sense, a hobbyist. He did to women what he did to animals with the same equipment and the same care, and he kept records of both in the same house. And that's what Cindy Paulson was strapped into a car to become. Here's how she did. So we're going to go back up to June because the break in this case did not come from the graves. It came from a teenager in handcuffs who refused to die on schedule. June 13th, 1983. Cindy Paulson was 17 years old. Some accounts say 18. Her stated birthday makes her 17 on this day. And 17 is what nearly everyone uses. She was a sex worker, a dancer, working downtown Anchorage. A man in a car offered her $200 for oral sex. She got in. And the second the transaction was set, surprise, surprise, he pulled a gun and handcuffed her. This was Robert Hansen. He drove her to his house, a blue house she later described on the right side of Old Harbor Road in the Muldoon neighborhood, just past the veterans' home. Inside, over roughly 5 hours, he raped and assaulted and terrorized her. He restrained her with the handcuffs and wound a chain or rope around her neck several times and tethered her. God. And he told her what came next. He told her he was going to fly her out to his cabin. Then he put her in his car and drove her to Merrill Field, the General Aviation Airfield we've talked about before. His plan was to load her onto the plane and fly her into the bush, whether we know now was the last flight for at least a dozen women before her. And at the airfield, he made a mistake. He left the driver's door of the car open, and he walked to the plane to load his gear, and for a moment she could only see him from the waist down, which mean he couldn't see her face, couldn't see her eyes calculating. And Cindy Paulson, 17 years old, barefoot, her hands still cuffed, ran.
Good for her.
Hell.
Good for her.
Yeah. She ran towards 6th Avenue, and a truck driver named Robert Yount saw a disheveled, terrified, handcuffed girl and stopped. Thank God. He got her away from there. He drove her to the Mush Inn, and then he went to work and called the police. She made her way to the Big Timber Motel where her boyfriend was staying, and that's where the police found her in room 110, still wearing handcuffs that Hansen had put on her. The handcuffs were still on her. That is not ambiguous evidence. That is the man's restraint on a child's wrist. Again, she was 17 years old.
And also such a testament to why we have to have laws about minors working in these environments and like minors and sexual encounters. Like that's the other thing that's been coming up a lot on social media that pisses me off is people wanting to drop the age of consent. Like absolutely not.
What is that about?
Absolutely not. If anything, it needs to go up unless you're like within a certain age range of somebody because it's so predatory.
Go down. What?
So predatory.
That's just disgusting.
Well, it goes back to our Junko episode of like, what would these people do if they thought they couldn't get caught?
Yep.
How young would they go?
Yep.
Right. Keep my thoughts to myself on that one.
Yeah, we're thinking the same thing. She gave the police a report. She described him. She described his house. She described the plane. She handed them Robert Hansen, and they didn't believe her.
Jeez.
Again, another common thing with all these cases, these fucking cops.
Yep.
Here's the evidence right in your face.
Yep.
That's the guy that did this to me.
I won't even look into it. That's what kills me. Is like,
you
know, when you see like online, like people talking about believe victims, right? That doesn't mean you don't investigate. It means you investigate. That's what it means. You investigate.
I'm breaking news. That's what it means.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's like people act like, believe victims false out. First of all, false allegations is like a non-existent thing. There's no more false allegations of sexual assault than there is any other violent crime. That it matches those numbers entirely. It's actually even lower because only 30% of assaults are even reported.
Yeah.
But also believing them simply means it's the same thing as if I call the police and I say, hey, my house got broken into, the window's broken, I think some things are missing. What do? They believe me and they show up. Now, it might turn out that they, I fucking threw a brick through the window, whatever. They might find that out, but they believe me enough to investigate. That's what believing the victims means.
They'll pull back to this. So somebody threw a brick through your window. Yes, officer. Well, what were you wearing?
Right, exactly. God.
Sorry for my language, too, guys. I get freaking fired up when I start reading this shit about these cops, man.
Just investigate it, dude.
Yeah, do your job.
Instead of using flock cameras to stalk women.
Don't get me started on the flock camera. We're going to derail anyway.
Anyways.
Sorry.
And it's because like
my eyes twitching.
This sentence says like Cindy Paulson, teenage prostitute.
Yep.
And that was their thing.
Yeah. And to the Anchorage Police Department in 1983, that made her a liar by default. You're a liar, you 17-year-old prostitute. She was reportedly treated roughly at the station. Investigators asked her to take a polygraph. She refused. And think about why a traumatized 17-year-old who has just been raped, has been treated like a suspect, might refuse a lie detector test.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what are you hiding?
Yep.
Jeez. And on the other side stood Robert Hansen, respectable married businessman, baker, churchgoer, family man, and he had an alibi. 2 friends, John Sumrall and John Henning, told police Hansen had been with them that night. Sumrall and Hansen was with him from 5 p.m. until 11:30, fixing an airplane seat. Henning and Hansen was at his house from 11:30 until 5 a.m. that they talked about fishing and eating pizza.
Wow, no gaps. Interesting. No gaps in the timeline? No transit time? No break between one person and the other? Interesting.
Who are these 2 assholes?
Right? Mm-hmm. We'll get to that in a second.
Oh, yeah, we will. Fucking sack full of batteries and go after him. Anyway, sorry.
It's soup for my family.
Exactly. So you have a quiet businessman with 2 alibi witnesses and a teenage sex worker who won't take a polygraph.
I even resent her being called a sex worker. Minors can't consent.
Just call her a girl.
Yeah.
Call her a fucking
Yeah.
girl, man.
And she's a minor, dude. Like crazy. Crazy.
The Anchorage Police Department and the prosecutor's office looked at that and concluded that Cindy Paulson, that she had made it up. They declined to pursue Robert Hansen. Plainly, the handcuffs were still on her wrists. A jury did not need a polygraph to read a pair of handcuffs. The system did not fail to catch Robert Hansen in June of 1983 because the evidence wasn't there. It was fucking handed to him on a silver platter. It still didn't do anything. Boss hog. Anyway, it failed to catch him because it had decided in advance that the word of a girl who sold sex was worth less than the word of a man who sold bread. Both of the men who gave him his alibi were lying. We'll get, they're coming up. We'll get to them. But the reason those lies worked is that everyone in that station wanted them to be true because the alternative meant taking a prostitute seriously. A child seriously.
Yeah. A fucking human being.
Yeah, exactly. Unlike this fucking monster. Robert Hansen walked out of June 1983 a free man. And in the months after Cindy Paulson handed him to the police, and the police handed him back his freedom, the graves by the Nick River kept their secrets. And Paula Goulding's body was found in September with a .223 casing beside it.
Well, eventually, they do actually investigate. Eventually.
Oh, sorry, you have to do your job. Well, are you going to be okay?
To his credit, there was someone who wouldn't let it go.
Yeah, thank God.
His name was Sergeant Glenn Floth, the Alaska State Troopers. So there's a jurisdictional conversation that has to happen here. Cindy Paulson's complaint had gone to the Anchorage Police Department, the city cops, and it was the city side that decided she wasn't credible and let Hansen go. But the bodies were turning up outside of city limits, out in state trooper territory. So the graves were the troopers' problem, and that's how the case landed on Glenn Floth's desk rather than dying quietly in an APD file. Sometimes the thing that saves the cases is that two agencies are looking at two halves of the story. Floth looked at the two graves, Morrow and Goulding, both dancers, both by the Nick, and the .223 bullets. And he looked at the Cindy Paulson report that Anchorage PD had shelved, and he saw a suspect. He also went back and pulled older files. The picture got worse. A dancer named Andrea Altieri vanished after a photo shoot lure, the same as Morrow, Sue Luna, Tamara Peterson gone, and Hansen's own record sitting right there, the 1971 assault, the dropped rape charge, the theft, and his diagnosis. A pattern that had been visible in pieces across a decade of separate files that no one had ever put together. And again, it's another part of the record keeping of the time, but also because they weren't looking.
No.
They weren't looking.
No,
It can't just be blamed on record keeping this time.
Nope.
It was just scattered across different desks, different agencies, different years, instead of in one database like what we would have, and filed under women no one had prioritized. The problem was proving it, though. When the troopers first sought search warrants, they were turned down. A respectable businessman's alibi and a disbelieved teenager weren't enough for the judge. So in October of 1983, Floth went to the FBI, specifically to the Behavioral Science Unit and to Special Agent John Douglas. If you have watched Mindhunter, you know who John Douglas is. He was one of the pioneers of criminal profiling, working with Agent James Horn. Sidebar on where the profile came from. The late 70s and early 80s, a small group of FBI agents in the basement in Quantico, again, if you've seen Mindhunter, Douglas, Robert Ressler, Roy Hazelwood, and others were inventing modern criminal profiling from scratch, basically. Their method was almost absurdly simple in description and grueling in practice. They went into prisons and interviewed the worst people in America, like Ed Kemper, Charles Manson. They sat with sexual sadists and mass murderers and asked them in detail why and how, and they built a database out of the answers that they learned. The idea was that behavior at a crime scene reflects personality, and that the what and how of a crime can be read backward into the who, age, job, relationship, status, prior record, all of it. And again, that is the real-life basis for the character in the Netflix show Mindhunter. The book that inspired it is his memoir.
Wow.
It's a great read.
Interesting.
Yeah. So Hansen did a lot of that early work. So what the profile showed for Robert Hansen was one of his best examples of the technique that he was building on record. Douglas told them the killer was an experienced hunter, that he would have low self-esteem and a history of rejection by women, that he would probably stutter or have a speech impediment, that he would, on the surface, a solid citizen, a hardworking businessman, a good provider. He had a religious wife who was not fully aware of what her husband did, and that he would keep trophies. He would take things from his victims like jewelry or rings or driver's licenses or clothing and keep them. Now, we hold that profile up to Robert Hansen, who is an award-winning big game hunter. a man who defined his entire life by rejection and humiliation going back to middle school girls. He had a pronounced stutter. He was a respectable baker with a church-going wife who had no idea because the crimes happened when she was out of town. A man who, unknown to anyone yet, had a dead woman's fish necklace in his house. Douglas essentially nailed Robert Hansen with this profile. Meanwhile, the alibi was rotting from the inside out. John Henning, one of the two men who'd lied to give Hansen his cover, couldn't live with the guilt. When troopers went to the Henning residence, John himself was away out in King's Salmon. But his wife, Joanne Henning, told the sergeants that her husband had covered for Hansen and lied to the police. Floth was briefed immediately. The alibi that had protected Robert Hansen in June was gone by October. Both men had lied, and one of their consciences, no, not even his conscience, like his wife's conscience, broke. Now Floth had the profile, the ballistic signature, the survivor's identification, and the collapsing alibi. This time, they were able to get a warrant.
Dun, dun. So I wonder how they deduced that he had like a stutter.
I don't have a clear answer on that. That does come up in quite a few profiles of like someone having a stutter or a speech impediment. I think it's based, the only thing I can think of is that it's based on like if someone has really low self-esteem.
Fair enough.
Or like doesn't fit into society really well. Like what are some characteristics that might cause someone to feel that way?
Gotcha. Picked on.
Probably
so common.
That to me, I don't know that they have like a science to that as much as patterns of how someone might move in society based on a characteristic they have.
And that would make sense to just kind of deducing it that way, because from the outside looking in, like when you're reading that, it's like, he has a stutter, probably an Aquarius. You know, it's like
probably
I'm over here going, what? You know, wears glasses, left-handed,
right?
Blue eyes. How do you know this?
You're right.
Maniacs.
He's like, like Drunk History, the show on YouTube. What if you did drunk behavioral profiles?
Oh my God. Country music fan.
Yeah, here we go.
Serial arsonist. Anyway, on October 27th, 1983, the Alaska State Troopers moved on Robert Hansen. Floth had gone before Judge Victor Carlson with a roughly 48-page affidavit and come away with a stack of search warrants covering Hansen's home, his plane, his vehicles, and his bakery. Hansen was arrested, and what they found inside the house on Old Harbor turned suspicion into certainty. Yeah, because the, obviously the handcuffed 17-year-old wasn't enough certainty.
You're right. It wasn't enough for you to even look.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a coincidence. They found firearms, an arsenal, some of it hidden away in the corner of an attic space of the house. Among them was a .223 caliber Ruger Mini 14. Sound familiar? Mm-hmm. When the ballistics came back, the rifle matched the spent casings found in the graves of Sherry Morrow and Paula Goulding. The gun that killed them was in the house. They found the trophies John Douglas had predicted, jewelry that had belonged to the women, personal identification, driver's licenses, newspaper clippings about the very murders he'd committed. He kept like a scrapbook, and of course, what was the piece? One of the pieces was that fish necklace, very unique. And they found the map. Hidden behind the headboard of his bed was an aviation chart, a navigation map of the region. And it was marked. Small marks, X's scattered across the wilderness. Jeez. Sources differ on the exact count. The figure most often cited is 37.
37.
I wouldn't be surprised, though some accounts put it lower. What mattered was what the marks meant. Some of them correspond to locations where bodies had already been found, which meant the others, the marks over empty wilderness where nobody had dug, were a map to the ones nobody had found yet. Robert Hansen, the meticulous record keeper, the man who entered his kills in the Pope and Young book and kept a record of these kills too, he had marked his graveyard on a chart and slept over it.
So gross.
Yeah, that's disturbing.
So gross.
At first, Hansen denied everything, of course. The respectable Baker performance held for a while, but the physical evidence was overwhelming. His rifle tied to 2 graves, a murdered woman's necklace in his home, a map of body sites behind his bed.
An eyewitness?
Yeah, No, that was a liar. She was making it up for attention. Here were the terms. Hansen would give a full confession. He would plead guilty to the murders the state could prove, and this is the part that only he could offer. He would help the troopers find the women. He would read his own map. In exchange, prosecutors would drop the remaining charges, and he negotiated to serve his time in a federal facility rather than an Alaskan one, and to keep the press at a distance. And so Robert Hansen, he confessed. Over a series of interviews in February of 1984, he admitted to 17 murders and to raping around 30 more women.
Jesus
30
Christ.
across roughly 12 years. Investigators sat across from the quiet baker while he narrated in flat detail a decade of hunting, the pickups downtown, the flights out, the killings, the burials. He walked his own aviation chart with the troops, putting his finger on the marks and telling them what each one was. And then in the spring of 1984, he did the thing that makes this real in a way nothing else does. He went back out to Nick River Wilderness with them and pointed to the graves. Wow. Picture the logistics of that, because it's grim and it's true. Snow still on the ground in places, troopers and a killer in a helicopter and on the river bars. Hansen in custody, orienting himself against the same landmarks he'd use as a hunter, saying there and there, pointing it. Recovery teams dug where he pointed. That is why so many of the recovery dates you heard cluster in April and May of 1984. Sue Luna, Malai Larson on April 24th, Angela Federn and Teresa Watson on the 26th, Tamara Peterson on the 29th, Lisa Futrell in May. Those women had been missing for years at this point, filed as women who'd left town, and they came home over a few weeks in the spring of 1984 because their killer walked a trooper to each grave. Think about that, what that meant for their families. I mean, thank God.
Yeah.
It's a horrible thing, but at least they get some closure.
At least they know.
Yeah. Let's see here. It's terrible and still better than the permanent nothing that some other families got. 12 bodies in the end were recovered. Robin Pelkey, Horseshoe Harriet, was among the remains found in 1984, but wouldn't get her name back for decades. Delynn Frey wouldn't be found until 1985, spotted by a pilot on a sandbar. Eklutna Annie, the first, and Roxanne Eastland and Andrea Altieri, whose bodies were never recovered at all, stayed lost. He'd confessed to 17. He could only or would only deliver 12. 17 confessed, 12 found, one still unnamed. The subtraction is why this case never really closes. Jeez.
And then on February 27th of 1984, in Anchorage Superior Court, it ended in a single day. The plea and the sentencing happened together. Robert Hansen pleaded guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder. Eklutna Annie, Joanna Messina, Sherry Morrow, and Paula Goulding, the 4 with the physical evidence. He also pleaded to the kidnapping and rape of Cindy Paulson. Apparently they believe her now. The girl they hadn't believed, now the centerpiece of the case against him, along with theft and insurance fraud counts. The insurance fraud was the old scheme where he reported his hunting trophies stolen, collected the money, and then they'd been found with, quote, stolen trophies in his backyard. The sentencing judge was Superior Court Judge Ralph E. Moody, and Judge Moody did not mince words. He told Hansen, quote, "I have to consider you the worst offender in all respects in all these charges against you," end quote, and expressed his hope that Hansen would never walk the streets as a free man again. Then he sentenced him 461 years plus a life term with no possibility of parole.
Plus a life.
Right. Plus so much
Keep a
more.
skeleton in there.
Robert Hansen was never going to get out of prison. Not on parole, not on appeal, not ever. He was going to die in prison, and everyone in that courtroom knew it. Good. Cindy Paulson, the 17-year-old they called a liar, testified against him. Her word, the word they'd thrown away in June, was part of what put him away. And so the deal, really quickly, the deal is a little bit... It's morally complicated, and I think it is in all of the cases that are like this. On the one side, Robert Hansen is allowed to plead to 4 murders when he confessed to 17, right? There's so many families that probably don't feel like that was justice.
No.
13 families at least never got to see the man charged for what he did to their daughter or their sister, never got a trial, never got to read the name into record as a murder count, never got that formal acknowledgement. For the families of the women who weren't among the 4, that is a deep and serious wound. And he got things he wanted out of it. He got a federal prison instead of an Alaskan one and a muffling of the press. But on the other side of that, the deal bought the map. It bought the confession. It bought Robert Hansen personally flying troopers to the grave sites of women who had been runaways or been missing. Without that deal, some of those families never get their daughters' bodies back at all. And these places don't get found. They don't get a confession. They don't get that guarantee that he's going to be put away forever.
Yeah.
A trial for 4 murders with a guaranteed lifetime sentence in exchange for the recovery of the missing. Prosecutors made a defensible call that certainty and recovery were worth more than the maximal charging spree they could go against. And I agree with that in this case. There's a lot of times that some of these predators get handed plea deals that you're like, excuse me?
Yeah.
I did a video this morning that referenced the sweetheart deal that Epstein got in Florida that we talked about.
Yeah, I remember that.
That stuff,
Good
absolutely
God.
not. Are you joking? But in an instance like this where you can put this person away forever and also bring some of the remains home, I think that's a justifiable deal.
I agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that.
And that doesn't negate what the families felt about
definitely
not getting that formal acknowledgement in court. But I think in this instance, the district attorney made the right call.
Yeah, I agree with that. Under the plea deal, Hansen was first sent out of state to the federal penitentiary at Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. In 1988, he was returned to Alaska. He held briefly at Lemon Creek in Juneau and then settled in for the long haul at Spring Creek Correctional Center, the maximum security prison just outside Seward. Seward, the same little port town where Megan Emmerich vanished from a laundry room, where Mary Thill was last seen by a waterfall, where Joanna Messina met him at the docks. He would spend most of the rest of his life imprisoned in the town that arguably held his first victims. He stayed at Spring Creek until May of 2014, when his health began to fail and he was transferred to the Anchorage Correctional Complex for medical reasons. That transfer is dated May 11th, 2014. A few months later, he was moved to Alaska Regional Hospital in Anchorage. And then around 1:30 in the morning on August 21st, 2014, Robert Hansen died in custody of what appeared to be natural causes. He was 75 years old. When he died, a retired trooper told the Anchorage Daily News that the world was better without him. I'm not going to argue with a man who spent his career digging Hansen's victims out of the Nick River mud.
At all.
At all. No arguments over here.
Yeah.
Robert Hansen got 30 years of prison, medical care, and a hospital bed at the end. Eklutna Annie got a shallow grave by a power line and a name that isn't hers. That's not justice. Justice was never on the table in this case. The best anyone got was containment. But I told you, Robin Pelkey's story wasn't over, and it isn't.
Yeah, and for 37 years, one of the women Hansen killed lay buried in an Anchorage cemetery under the name Horseshoe Harriet because when she disappeared, no one had filed a report. A homeless 19-year-old cut loose from her family was so far outside the system's care that her own murder couldn't give her name. In 2014, the same year that Hansen died, the case was reopened. Early attempts to pull usable DNA profile from her remains failed. Then in September 2020, the Alaska Bureau of Investigation's Cold Case Unit sent a bone sample to a private lab and worked with a company called Parabon Nanolabs to try genetic genealogy. Little teeny sidebar on the technology, because I think it's fascinating and it's being used for a lot of these people that got forgotten. Traditional forensic DNA is a matching tool. If you have a sample, you have a suspect, you compare. It's useless if your suspect or your victim isn't already in a database. Forensic genetic genealogy flips the problem. Instead of looking for an exact match, you take unknown DNA, run it against enormous consumer genealogy databases, which are being built by things like 23andMe and Ancestry DNA kits. You look for partial matches, third cousins, second cousins, distant relatives. Then genealogists build the family tree forward from those relatives, cross-referencing birth and death, marriage records, until the branches converge on one person who fits. This was how they got Golden State.
Yeah.
It's the technique that finally identified, again, the Golden State Killer in 2018 and cracked this field wide open. For a victim, it means a skeleton with no name can be routed through a stranger's spit kit to a second cousin or to a family somewhere. And that's what they did for her. They built a profile and they found a close relative in Arkansas that matched. On October 22nd, 2021, the Alaska Department of Public Safety announced that Horseshoe Harriet had a name, Robin Pelkey, born in Colorado, 1963, 19 years old when Robert Hansen killed her. Her family, who had wondered for 4 decades, finally knew what had happened to her.
God.
Robert Hansen spent his whole life trying to erase that woman so completely, and thankfully, with technology, we were able to give Robin her name back. Eklutna Annie is still out there waiting for her name, however.
It's wild. A few things to carry out of this case, because Hansen had been dead for over a decade, and the questions he raises are still open. You may know this story through the 2013 movie The Frozen Ground with Nicolas Cage as the trooper and John Cusack as Hansen and Vanessa Hudgens as Cindy Paulson. It's a real film and worth knowing about, but treat it as a dramatization rather than a documentary. The trooper character is renamed and partly composite. Events are compressed and altered for the screen. If you want the truth, the book Butcher, Baker, and the Trooper Case record are where it lives. I want to check out that book.
The book is really good.
The movie's most valuable contribution is probably just this. It centered Cindy Paulson. It made the girl nobody believed the protagonist. That's the correct instinct 40 years late, of course.
Yeah.
Because here's the incredible through line, and it did not die with him. The thing that let Robert Hansen kill for 12 years was not a lack of evidence. It was a hierarchy of whose words count. A business, again, like we were getting pissed about earlier, rightfully so. A businessman's alibi over a sex worker's identification. A missing dancer filed as a runaway. The quiet assumption stitched into the machinery that some women are reportable and some are not. And I'd love to tell you that's a period detail, a thing for the old 80s that we fixed. Nothing's been fixed, people.
No.
Ask the families in the missing and murdered Indigenous women's movement, like we talked at the beginning.
And we see this so much too in like there's this ideology that is still so rampant. And I think as Christian nationalism gets stronger in the States, we see it more that like only certain types of women are worth protecting.
Yeah.
Only certain types of women are worth listening to. And like as a woman, you have to have a certain appearance or a certain behavior to be considered worth protecting. And like what was it, the Doug Wilson interview here recently?
Was that maniac?
Yeah. He and I can't get his quote directly, but I was so glad that the investigator asked him about it. He essentially said that if you don't submit to men in the patriarchal system, then you are submitting to the propriety of rape.
Jesus Christ.
Obey me or I'll hurt you. That's not an abusive relationship at all.
That's not a psychopath.
Right?
Not at all. These people that care so much about appearances and certain types of, all this. And I'm trying to remember, there was a group a few years back that cared about that too. I don't remember
weird.
right. I don't remember who it is.
Seems like
right
early
now.
20th century. I can't remember exactly.
I don't remember. I think the guy was a painter from Austria, maybe. Don't, correct me if I'm wrong.
And it's this like your behavior gets measured against, are crimes allowed, quotation marks, to be committed against you or not, which is so sad. And you hear that so much in the language that we still use.
Exactly. But what has changed as opposed to that, and this is the hopeful part, is the science and the stubbornness. The reason Robin Pelkey got her name back in 2021 is that cold case units and forensic genetic genealogy have made it possible to reach back decades and undisappear people. Departments that once shrugged at a Jane Doe now have a path, if they choose to walk it, to a name and a family. The catching up is real. Cluton Annie is still out there waiting for it, and there's no guarantee it comes. But the tools exist now that didn't when they buried her as a Jane Doe. And every few months, somewhere in this country, another set of nameless remains gets routed through a database to a grieving family. That's the counterweight. That's the work. I mean, I'm so happy to see that that's an option.
Yeah.
Today's day and age. And the last thing to carry is a 17-year-old at an airfield. Cindy Paulson did everything right and was disbelieved anyway. And she is the reason Robert Hansen was stopped.
I wonder why they don't go to the police. Why didn't you report it?
Yeah. Look how they get treated. 17 years old, come in with handcuffs. There's no evidence.
Yeah. That's crazy.
There's fucking evidence on her wrist, and they believe the two goobers. What happened to those assholes?
Yeah. To my knowledge, they were never prosecuted for anything.
They should have been. Accomplices.
That especially as something like that, I would say there's an argument to be made of being an accomplice after the fact.
How many times have you defended him before that and given him an alibi? Seemed like they got off a little bit easy. The lesson the institution should have learned from her is simple, and they keep having to relearn it. Believe the person the system finds inconvenient. She kept her head, she ran, she told the truth, and the truth was on her wrist, like I said, the whole time. The failure wasn't hers. That's the end of this case.
That's the end of the episode. We're going to end with some highway highlights, just recapping the episode, and then our travel itinerary for Alaska. Number 1, Robert Hansen operated for over a decade, not because he was a criminal genius, but because of who he chose. Again, we've seen this with the Green River Killer, so many others. He hunted women the system had already decided not to look for: dancers, sex workers, transients, and a homeless 19-year-old. Number 2, he was caught over and over before the killing: a 1960 arson, a diagnosed compulsive thief, a 1971 assault with a deadly weapon plea, a 1971 rape charge dropped, a chainsaw theft. Every warning was in the file. This quiet married businessman with a good lawyer and a mental health diagnosis kept getting the benefit of the doubt that his victims never got.
There was just no evidence.
No evidence. I don't know. Who could have seen this coming? Truly.
Not me.
Number 3, the break came from 17-year-old Cindy Paulson, identified Robert Hansen in June 1983, and the police handed him back his freedom because she was a teenage sex worker and he was a baker with an alibi. His handcuffs were still on her wrists. Both alibi witnesses were lying. And again, believe survivors, because what believe the victims actually means is investigate.
Yep.
Number 4, the forensics that finally held were a shell casing and a map. A single .223 casing beside Sherry Morrow's body, matched to a second casing beside Paula Goulding's, matched to a rifle in his house, and then, of course, the aviation chart that marked where his kills were behind his headboard. Number 5, Robin Pelkey got her name back in 2021, 37 years after her murder, through genetic genealogy and a cold case unit that decided they were going to fight for her. Eklutna Annie hopefully will get her name back, and we will be able to give her her identity back as well. Let's go to Anchorage. So this is a 5-day Anchorage itinerary. Alaska truly is beautiful. When I was there, I was in Ketchikan, very, very south. But I was able to go crab fishing and halibut fishing and salmon fishing. It was so much fun and so much hiking, so beautiful. But I went in summer. I think for me, the thing I couldn't handle about Alaska is the dark.
Oh, yeah.
In the winter, I don't think so.
Grim and frosted.
I don't think so. But I built this one around Anchorage. So day 1, downtown Anchorage. Coffee first because we are civilized, mostly. In this house.
You know, Robert Hansen wasn't a coffee drinker.
Right? No, definitely not. Definitely not.
I heard he liked tea.
So we're going to start at Dark Horse Coffee downtown on F Street, or go straight to a genuine Alaska institution, Kaladi Brothers, which started as a coffee cart in Anchorage back in 1984 at the time of these murders and bodies. And it roasts its own coffee beans. So once you are caffeinated, again, like a civilized human being, walk to the Snow City Cafe on West 4th. It's been voted the best breakfast by locals since 2003. You're going to want the Salmon Cakes Benedict if you like fish. 4th Avenue itself is in this history, right? This is the old Tenderloin, the strip of clubs and bars at the center of the case. Walk it, you'll get to see the geography. In the evening, go to dinner at Club Paris on West 5th. This is an old school downtown steakhouse, one of the oldest restaurants in the city, and is a genuine period room that was serving during the years of this case. For nightcap and live music, go to the Chilkoot Charlie's, or it's just called Coots. The legendary Spinard bar since 1970 has multiple stages and an actual ice bar. And a lot of the reviews say, listen, it's really loud in here, but it's totally worth it. So
nice.
Day 2, we're going to do a ghost day because this is Highway to Hell, and I try to keep things spooky for you. Book a night at the historic Anchorage Hotel on E Street, one of the only early 20th century buildings left in the city because of that major earthquake. The staff kept an actual ghost log at the front desk. There's reported sightings including children's footsteps in empty halls, a woman in a wedding dress on the second floor, a spirit of Police Chief Jack Sturgis, who was murdered nearby in 1921.
Dang.
Obviously this is folklore, but it's really fun. Walk past the 4th Avenue Theater, a beautiful 1947 building now closed to the public, where the legend is a top-hatted figure in the balcony, and down by the water, Ship Creek, or the local story of Marie, and that's actually a real, if undocumented, claim about the murder of an Alaskan Native woman, also is set to haunt the area around Ships Creek. Coffee for that day, for day 2, because this is a lot of exploring ghost sites, go to Steam Dot. That's an artisan roaster that Food and Wine picked as Alaska's representative coffee shop. Day 3, we're going to go to Eklutna and the Nick River. These are obviously where the bodies were found, and also just really beautiful wilderness area. You're going to want to rent a car, drive north out of Anchorage on the Glen Highway, about half an hour to Eklutna, Alaska's oldest continuously inhabited Athabaskan village. This land with roots going back centuries. I mean, way before any Europeans got here.
Wow. At
the Eklutna Village Historical Park, you'll find roughly 80 brightly painted spirit houses over the graves. It's a blend of Dena'ina and Russian Orthodox tradition beside St. Nicholas Church, the oldest building in the greater Anchorage area. This is a sacred cemetery. So again, as always, with any kind of cemetery, go quiet, be respectful, follow the posted rules, but it's really, really beautiful. Nearby Eklutna Lake and the Chugach State Park is a glacial, stunning worth. You can go paddle there, go hike there. And this is very close to where Eklutna Annie was found. But if you're an outdoor person and you have not been to Alaska, you are truly missing out. You don't need to hunt for the spot. You can just stand in the enormous landscape, and it's so beautiful, and it's so massive. It's truly, truly breathtaking. Further out toward the Matsu, the Nick River runs glacial and wide between the mountains and the arms. So this is really an outdoor day, and really stopping among a lot of these like very spiritual holy sites. Day 4. This is the Alaska of the brochures, right? So for the morning, hike Flat Top Mountain, the most popular summit in the state, up in Chugach State Park, 360 views over the city and Cook Inlet, or walk or bike to Tony Knowles Coastal Trail, which is 11 paved miles from downtown along the Cook Inlet out to Kincaid Park, with moose on a clear day, views of Denali, and peak locals called the Sleeping Lady. Denali is, again, in my mountain climbing obsession, Denali is one that if I was ever to get brave enough, I would try it, even though the weather's crazy. Keep your eyes on the Turnagain Arm for beluga whales. Fuel with the Moose's Tooth, which is a beloved local pizza and craft beer spot from Broken Tooth Brewing, or its sister theater pub, the Beartooth, where you can watch a movie with a pizza and a house brewed beer in hand, and then watch the sunset from Kincaid Park. Day 5, we're going to go to Seward and the fjords. Give yourself a whole day and drive to Seward Highway South, about 125 miles, one of the most beautiful drives in North America along the Turnagain Arm and through the mountains. Stop at Portage Glacier on the way. Seward sits on Resurrection Bay, and it's the gateway to the Kenai Fjords National Park. Take a boat tour here, out to the Tidewater Glaciers, the sea lions, the puffins. It's like being in a very different world. Seward is also quietly the town at the edge of this whole story, right? Emmerich, Till, Messina. I'm not sending you there to think about him, but that is where it took place. I'm sending you there because it's so beautiful. And if you don't have any interest in going to Alaska, look at the photos anyway. It's really beautiful. For dinner, get back toward Anchorage. If you've still got a night, 49th State Brewing downtown. There's a rooftop patio. Cook Inlet and the Alaska Range in front of you. Alaskan food on your plate. Like, that's just, I love the mountains. I think
Me too.
So many people, everybody has their own things they're drawn to. I also feel very drawn to deserts, but for me, mountains.
I like deserts too.
Mountains take the cake. And if I could just sit and have dinner and I can just see a mountain range in front of me, that is pristine and perfect. So thank you all for riding with us on this one. As always, thank you to our Patreon supporters who have helped us pick topics, and you get these little campfire chats that we're going to record now. And as always, we will see you next week on Highway to Hell.
See you guys.